10 Whispers of Madness from the Stars. Logs of Space Explorer Jenkins Jackson. Year 3457, Day 1 of the 5th cycle. The Academy of Nerithium has selected me and 5 crew members, who, for reasons of security and discretion, shall remain unnamed, to embark on a mission that will either make us rich beyond measure, or see us join the ever-growing list of lost souls swallowed by the void. Our destination: the dark side of XE-15, a barren moon in the forgotten expanse of System Bravo 11. The Academy has detected strange readings from its surface, anomalies that mock the very fabric of quantum law. The last expedition sent a decade ago never returned. No wreckage, no distress calls, not even an echo of their final moments. The moon simply swallowed them whole. They tell us the pay is substantial. Enough to buy a life beyond the sterile walls of synthetic habitats, beyond lab-grown rations and recycled air. Real food. A real home. But the reward comes at a price, and I know that more than just the moon itself is waiting for us in that darkness. We leave tomorrow, jumping to the nearest chartered sector before continuing the journey by sublight. A half-cycle of travel before we reach our destination. The ship, AG-13, is an old warhorse, a battle-scarred veteran of conflicts long past. It has seen fire, death, and horrors far greater than men should ever witness. It is reliable, a perfect companion for a mission such as this. The crew is composed of survivors, each with their own demons. A war veteran whose past weighs heavy upon his shoulders. A pilot whose hands have danced with death more times than I care to count. A gunner, sharp-eyed and silent, who trusts his weapon more than his words. And the scientist, our guide into the unknown, a master of quantum physics and the occult sciences. He is our key to understanding what lies ahead, and yet, something about him unsettles me. His knowledge is vast, but there is a hollowness in his gaze, as if he has already seen what we are yet to face. We are armed. We are prepared. We tell ourselves that, but deep in my gut, I know, some things are beyond preparation. Year 3457, Day 5 of the 5th cycle. The jump was a success, and we now drift through the cold expanse, 3 days into our journey. So far, everything is proceeding smoothly. Spirits remain high, though an unspoken tension lingers beneath the surface, a weight none of us acknowledge but all of us feel. The scanning systems have begun mapping the system ahead. It is sparse: 2 gas giants, 3 barren wastelands of planets, and the distant, dim glow of a blue dwarf sun. It is not an extraordinary system by any means, yet something about it gnaws at the edges of reason. Despite its proximity to colonized space, there are no records of it, no charts, no logs, no expeditions aside from the one that vanished 10 cycles ago. It is as if the system has been deliberately erased from the archives, wiped from the annals of human expansion. What else has the Academy failed to tell us? Year 3457, Day 21 of the 5th cycle. We are close now. The system stretches before us like a wound in the fabric of space, peculiarly dark, unnervingly silent. The void should be alive with distant stars, but here, the firmament is barren. The blackness is absolute, a depth beyond comprehension. The only illumination comes from the blue dwarf, its cold radiance casting long, unnatural shadows across our hull. And then, there is the mist. It drifts like a phantom tide, veils of deep crimson that coil and shift beneath the distant light. When the blue dwarf's glow touches it, the mist does not simply brighten, it reacts. The red dissolves into a sickly violet, writhing as though imbued with some malign intelligence. It does not behave as mist should. It is thick, almost tangible, and our instruments struggle to analyze it. The readings make no sense, frequencies that shift erratically, signals that do not belong to any known form of matter. We avoid it. Instinct demands it, but it is everywhere, lingering at the edges of our path, watching. Then there is the scientist. The Academy forced us to take him aboard, a specialist in both quantum mechanics and arcane theory. I had assumed his knowledge would be an asset, but now, I am no longer sure. 3 times a day, he stands at the viewport, staring into the empty black, whispering prayers in a tongue I do not recognize. They are not words of comfort, not calls for guidance or protection. No, they are different, reverent, desperate, something between devotion and surrender. The crew is unnerved. He does not sleep, does not eat more than what is necessary to sustain him. And when I catch glimpses of his reflection in the glass, I swear his lips move even when his voice is silent. We have had strange crew members before. Soldiers with shattered minds, pilots who drown their demons in alcohol. But this man is something else, something worse. I do not want to share a room with him. I do not want to hear his voice in the silence. And, more than anything, I do not want to know what he sees when he looks into the void. Year 3457, Day 29 of the 5th cycle. We have arrived at XE-15. From orbit, the moon gleams like polished silver, its surface impossibly smooth, reflecting the distant starlight with a cold, menacing glint. At certain angles, the sheen becomes almost blinding, an eerie shimmer that unsettles the mind. It does not seem natural, though I cannot yet say why. Our initial task is simple: deploy satellites and probes into the moon's magnetic field, scan and observe from above for the coming days. And yet, something is wrong. It is not a single event or malfunction, but a creeping, gnawing wrongness that we cannot yet name. For days now, our columns have been silent. We assumed interference at first, an error in transmission, a mere anomaly. But it persists. No word from the outside, no signals reaching us. And the stars, gods, the stars, are vanishing. Where once the void was alive with distant suns, there is now an absence. Only the blue dwarf remains, its searing light a beacon against the endless dark. Every day, I catch myself staring at it longer, feeling its pull, drawn to its luminance as if it calls to me by name. It is foolishness, I tell myself. And yet, each passing hour, the compulsion grows stronger. I fear what we will find here. Year 3457, Day 31 of the 5th cycle. The data is incomprehensible. The scientist, usually a paragon of calculation and reason, now rages at the information pouring in from our probes. He spits curses, flings his tablet to the ground, and storms through the ship like a caged animal. I do not blame him. I have seen the results myself: strings of jumbled numbers and letters, shifting equations that resolve into gibberish, readings that contradict themselves within the same breath. The machines should not be capable of this. And yet, they persist in their lunacy, whispering their nonsense in endless streams of corrupted logic. Perhaps it is the anomaly warping them, bending their senses as it bends ours. No traces of prior expeditions have been found. No wreckage, no ruins, not even the scar of a crash site. There should be craters, moons or graveyards of celestial impacts, but this one is untouched, silky smooth, featureless, as if nothing has ever disturbed its surface. And then, there is the light, a flicker, barely perceptible, emerging from the dark side of the moon. It does not pulse like a distress beacon nor linger like the glow of reflected light. No, it appears for the briefest instant, a fraction of a second, always from the same spot, only to vanish as if it was never there. We believed it might be a signal. We sent a probe. It found nothing. Only the same unbroken, barren expanse. Year 3457, Day 35 of the 5th cycle. The analysis nears completion, 97%. Yet, nothing of significance has been uncovered. The numbers, the readings, all amount to nothing. It is as though the moon itself refuses to be understood. If we are to make sense of this place, we will have to descend. The prospect unsettles me. I have seen the way the scientist has changed, the way his prayers, those feverish, whispered incantations, have grown in volume and intensity. At first, they were quiet things, muttered under his breath, as if to reassure himself in the face of the unknown. But now, they have become something else. He prays in tongues we do not recognize, speaking in fractured syllables that do not belong to any earthly dialect. His voice trembles with something between reverence and terror, and I swear, at times, that he is not alone in his chanting, that somewhere in the static of our failed calms, in the droning hum of the ship, something else murmurs with him. The others have noticed. Morale has crumbled. Tensions rise. It is only a matter of time before someone puts an end to it, one way or another. Year 3457, Day 37 of the 5th cycle. The system is still stuck at 97%. It has not crashed. It has not failed. It simply refuses to move forward, as if held in place by some unseen force. The crew is at its breaking point. The scientist's prayers do not cease. He no longer speaks to us, only to whatever thing he believes is listening. The others have had enough. There are whispers of violence, of silencing him before his madness spreads. I do not know whether I will stop them when the time comes. Tomorrow, we will go to the source of the light. We will walk upon the unbroken surface of this moon, set foot upon its lifeless ground, and look upon the place where the beacon flickers for but a moment in the dark. We must know, even if we will not like what we find. Year 3457, Day 39 of the 5th cycle. Yesterday, 4 of us descended upon the beacon site, leaving the pilot in orbit as our lone tether to the world beyond. The moment we set foot upon this forsaken soil, we knew something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The very land beneath us defies comprehension. When viewed from above, it gleams a spectral silver, like polished metal beneath alien suns. Yet here, upon its surface, it is black, an abyssal darkness so complete that our flashlights pierce it only feebly, their beams devoured within mere meters. Worse still, where the light strikes, the blackness does not yield to mere illumination but instead shifts, reflects, pulses with a grotesque violet sheen. It is as if this world exists in two opposing states, one seen from afar, another in the tainted realm of touch and presence. But the land, strange as it is nothing compared to what awaited us at the landing site. A monolith, towering, monstrous, it loomed like a specter against the starlit void. The scientist among us, a man given to cold logic and reason, likened it to a 14th-century Gothic church, though the resemblance was an echo of familiarity rather than an absolute truth. If it was built by hands, human or otherwise, those hands have long since turned to dust. What defies explanation is its construction, for it is seamless, a single vast slab of black stone untouched by time. No joints, no seams, no signs of chiseling or placement, only an impossibly vast and perfect whole. We ventured inside. Within, the architecture is both awe-inspiring and nightmarish. A great central pathway leads into the depths, flanked by two shadowed aisles, rows of what might be seats forming a perverse resemblance to a cathedral. At the farthest end, an altar rises in solemn silence, an unholy centerpiece to whatever purpose this place once served. From it oozes a strange, luminescent blue substance, thick and slow, pooling in unnatural stillness. It does not glisten like liquid should. Rather, it seems to drink the light, twisting it into something unknowable. Then, the silence took us. Our calms failed without warning. No static, no flicker, only an abyssal quiet. The landing craft, our one means of escape, suffered an inexplicable malfunction, dead as the void itself. Audiobook 15 might as well be in another universe, for all the good it does us now. Our suits will sustain us for 10 days. By protocol, the pilot will descend after 5 days of no contact. I can only pray that he finds us before something else does. Year 3457, Day 41 of the 5th cycle. There is no light, there is no time. Only the thick, suffocating dark. The suit's chronometer flickers erratically, its numbers fluctuating, reversing, halting in place like a thing confused, as if time itself has begun to break down within these unhallowed walls. There is no day or night, no way to mark the passage of hours. We exist in a void where moments stretch and contract in ways that twist the mind. Worse still, the scientist has succumbed. I do not know when it began. Perhaps it was always inside him, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. He sits now at the foot of the altar, his form barely discernible beneath the layers of translucent blue filth in which he wallows. The vile ooze clings to him, seeps into the joints of his suit, obscuring his faceplate until only a faint, shifting blur remains where his features once were. He does not speak as men do. Instead, his lips move ceaselessly, shaping words that no human tongue should know. His voice a hushed and feverish murmur that grates against the very fibers of my being. The veteran tried to confront him, to shake him from whatever madness had seized him. He was met with a sound I cannot describe, something not quite human, not quite animal. A hiss, yes, but more than that, a vibration in the air, a resonance that shivered through my skull and into the marrow of my bones. The veteran recoiled, and I saw fear in his eyes, a look I had thought him incapable of. The scientist does not stop. He does not sleep. He does not eat. He only chants, whispers, prays to things unseen, his hands tracing symbols into the black stone with trembling reverence. We have not rested since. Even when exhaustion overtakes us and our minds slip into the cruel grasp of sleep, nightmares find us, visions of impossible structures and landscapes writhing in colors beyond mortal sight. The screams of the madman drag us back into wakefulness, his words slithering into our ears, wrapping around our thoughts like tendrils of some unseen parasite. The Academy sent him with us. Why? Did they know? Did they suspect? Or was he chosen by something older, something watching, something waiting? There is little doubt now. He will not be leaving this place with us. I fear, deep in the blackened core of my soul, that none of us will. Year 3457, Day 42 of the 5th cycle. We three, what remains of our dwindling party, sought refuge beyond the monolith, desperate to escape its oppressive presence and the relentless babbling of the madman. We stumbled through the blackened ruins, past columns half devoured by time and walls etched with symbols that defied understanding, until we reached what should have been a place of solace. Yet, even there, far from that loathsome structure, his voice pursued us. It was not a mere sound. No, this was something far worse. His words, feverish and unbroken, did not carry through air alone, but through the very marrow of our bones, as if the monolith itself drank his ravings and exhaled them back upon us in an echo of torment. It was as though the cursed edifice had taken his voice as its own, a monstrous instrument through which the insanity of long-dead eons still murmured. Sleep is a hollow mockery. When exhaustion claims me, it is only to hurl me into the embrace of grotesque visions, shifting, pulsating landscapes where colors burn the eyes and geometry writhes in obscene contortions. I wake gasping, slick with cold sweat, only to find his shrieks tearing through the stagnant air, a ghastly wail that scrapes against my mind like rusted metal. The others fare no better. Their eyes are sunken, their hands tremble, and in their haunted expressions, I see my own growing despair reflected. I can bear no more. If silence will not come of its own accord, then I shall wrest it from his throat myself. Even now, my fingers tighten around the grip of my weapon, the thought of ending his miserable existence a solace against the tide of madness. If the monolith demands a sacrifice, then let it take his wretched soul. Perhaps then, at last, we shall have peace. Year 3457, day 43 of the 5th cycle. It was inevitable. The gunner could endure no more, and truth be told, not a soul among us wished to dissuade him. With a trembling hand, his knuckles pale against the worn grip of his firearm, he crept behind the madman, the wretched, raving thing that had once been our companion, and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out like a thunderclap in the suffocating stillness of that accursed temple. A crimson bloom erupted from the back of the lunatic's skull, and with a sickening crack, his head struck the altar, a slab of black, unidentifiable stone, older than the oldest civilizations, etched with sigils that twisted the eye and soured the mind. He crumpled there, lifeless, his babbling at last silenced, or so we thought. The chanting, oh, the abhorrent, ceaseless chanting, did not falter. It slithered through the air, reverberating off the impossibly smooth walls of the monolith that loomed at the chamber's heart. The voices, inhuman yet somehow familiar, rose and fell in a cadence that mocked sanity itself. The very stone seemed to throb with some obscene, ancient rhythm, as if it, too, partook in the unholy litany. The corpse at the altar twitched, as though the soul that had fled it had left something behind, something writhing, and unspeakable. The weight of our predicament pressed upon us with the suffocating force of deep ocean trenches. What had we unearthed in this forsaken ruin? What malignant force had we stirred from slumber? A few more days, and we could flee this place, take what we had come for, and leave this world to its own cursed fate. We told ourselves this, clinging to the thought like drowning men grasping at phantom lifelines. Yet, in the darkest corners of my mind, an insidious doubt coiled like a serpent. Would we ever truly leave? Or had we already crossed a threshold from which no mortal could return? Year 3457, day 44, of the 5th cycle. The goo, that accursed, pulsating substance, has defied all reason and brought the scientist back to life. But what has risen is no longer the man we once knew. His form is grotesque, a blasphemous mockery of humanity, his skin a sickly, translucent blue that glistens with an otherworldly sheen. He stands now in a posture that chills the soul, his body arched unnaturally, his hands clasped behind his back as though in some perverse imitation of serenity. His head is tilted upward, his gaze fixed upon the heavens, as if communing with some unseen horror that lurks beyond the veil of stars. The incessant blabbering that once poured from his lips has quieted, but in its place is something far worse, a low, guttural murmur that seems to resonate not in the air, but within the very marrow of my bones. The words are alien, their meaning incomprehensible, yet they carry a weight of malevolence that makes my skin crawl. It is as though the very fabric of reality strains to contain the sound, as though the universe itself recoils from the utterance of such forbidden syllables. We are all gripped by a terror that defies description. The veteran, ever the stalwart, attempted to put an end to this abomination. He fired his weapon, the sharp crack of the gunshot echoing through the monolith's cavernous chamber. The round struck true, tearing into the scientist's flesh, but the effect was not what we had hoped. Instead of falling, the creature bled, not blood, but great fountains of that vile, azure goo, which cascaded from the wounds in torrents, pooling on the ground with a sickening wetness. And then, before our horrified eyes, the wounds began to close, the flesh knitting itself back together with a speed that defied all natural law. The veteran fired again and again, his face a mask of desperation, but it was futile. Each wound closed as quickly as it was made, the goo surging forth only to be reabsorbed, as though the creature were drawing sustenance from its own corruption. The scientist, no, the thing, did not even flinch. It merely stood there, its gaze still fixed upon the heavens, its murmurs growing louder, more insistent, as though it were summoning something from the void. We are trapped here, ensnared in a nightmare from which there is no awakening. The air is thick with the stench of the goo, a cloying, metallic odor that clings to the back of the throat and refuses to be ignored. The walls of the monolith seem to pulse in time with the creature's murmurs, the ancient stone alive with a rhythm that is both hypnotic and horrifying. I can feel it in my chest, a deep, resonant thrum that sets my teeth on edge and makes my vision blur. The veteran has retreated, his face pale, his hands trembling. The gunner is nowhere to be seen, having fled into the depths of the monolith in a blind panic. I am left alone with this abomination, this thing that was once a man, and I can feel my sanity slipping away with each passing moment. The goo is everywhere now, pooling on the floor, creeping up the walls, its surface rippling as though alive. I dare not touch it, for I fear what it might do to me, what it might become. I do not know how much longer I can endure. The creature's murmurs grow louder, more insistent, and I can feel something stirring in the depths of the monolith, something ancient and malevolent that has lain dormant for eons. The air grows colder, the shadows deeper, and I am filled with a sense of dread so profound that it threatens to consume me entirely. We should never have come here. We should never have disturbed this place. The Academy, in their arrogance, sent us to uncover secrets that were never meant to be known, and now we must pay the price. The goo, the monolith, the creature, they are all part of something greater, something older than time itself. And it is awake. God help us all. Final log entry, System Bravo 11. Transmitted into the void, year 3457, 5th cycle, day unknown. To whoever may find this message, I beseech you, heed my warning and never venture into this accursed system. Let the coordinates of Bravo 11 be stricken from all charts, its name whispered only in the darkest of tales, a cursed epitaph for those who dare to tread where they should not. I write this now in the shadow of unspeakable horrors, my mind fraying at the edges, my body trembling with the weight of what I have witnessed. I fear my time grows short, and the abyss yawns wide before me. The ship, our fragile vessel of escape, lies in ruins. Its once proud hull, a testament to human ingenuity, now smolders in the desolate wasteland of this forsaken world. The explosion was sudden, catastrophic, and utterly beyond comprehension. The madman, no, I dare not call him such, for he is no longer a man, shattered the altar with a strength that defied all natural laws. A fragment of that ancient, blasphemous structure hurtled through the air like a comet, piercing the ship's engine with unerring precision. The resulting detonation was a symphony of destruction, a cacophony of fire and metal that left us stranded in this hellish place. And then, he spoke. His voice was not his own, but a guttural, resonant echo that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of reality. It was a voice that carried the weight of eons, a voice that spoke of things beyond the ken of mortal minds. I am Calthusan, he intoned, his words dripping with a malice that chilled me to my core. The last of my kind, resting here for millennia in sacred slumber. Who are you, wretched fools, to desecrate my sanctum? The words hung in the air like a curse, and in that moment, I knew we had awakened something far beyond our understanding. The thing that had once been our scientist, now a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and that unholy blue goo, moved with a speed and grace that defied all reason. His form was twisted, his limbs elongated, his face a mask of writhing tendrils and pulsating veins. He was no longer human, if indeed he ever had been. The gunner, poor soul, was the first to fall. The creature, Calthusan, lunged at him with a ferocity that was both horrifying and mesmerizing. His hands, now clawed and dripping with that infernal goo, tore through the gunner's suit as though it were paper. The screams that followed were not of this world, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the very stones beneath our feet. I watched in paralyzed horror as the gunner's arms were ripped from his body, the goo seeping into his wounds, twisting and corrupting what remained of him. The veteran and I fled in opposite directions, driven by primal instinct rather than reason. The creature pursued the veteran, his movements a blur of unnatural speed. I dared not look back, but the sounds that followed, the wet, tearing noises, the guttural growls, the veteran's final, choked cries, will haunt me until my dying breath. I am alone now, adrift in this nightmare. My suit systems falter, the oxygen dwindling, the nutrition reserves nearly depleted. I have taken refuge in the shadow of the monolith, its towering form a grim reminder of our folly. The air is thick with the stench of decay and the faint, acrid tang of the goo. I can hear it now, a low, rhythmic hum emanating from the monolith, a sound that seems to pulse in time with my own heartbeat. It is a sound that whispers of ancient secrets, of things that should never have been disturbed. I do not know how much longer I can endure. The creature is out there, stalking me, its presence a constant weight upon my soul. I have tried to fight, to resist, but I know it is futile. This is not a battle that can be won by mortal hands. The goo, the monolith, the creature, they are all part of something greater, something older than the stars themselves. We were fools to think we could uncover its secrets and live to tell the tale. To those who find this message, I implore you, do not come here. Do not seek out the mysteries of Bravo 11. Let this system be forgotten. Let its name be erased from all records. The Academy, in their hubris, sent us here to uncover the unknown, but some things are better left buried. They have doomed us all, and I fear the consequences of their actions will reverberate far beyond this wretched place. My time grows short. The creature draws near, its footsteps echoing in the darkness. I can feel its presence, a cold, malevolent force that seeps into my very soul. I will fight until the end, but I know there is no escape. This is my final act of defiance, my last hope that this message will reach someone, anyone, who can ensure that no others suffer our fate. Never return to Bravo 11. Let the stars hide its secrets forever. End of transmission. The Great Archive. Chapter 1. The Great Archive. Among the infinite archives scattered across the vast reaches of the cosmos, there exists one that stands apart, a repository of knowledge so ancient and arcane that it rests upon the very fringes of human understanding. This institution, the Great Archive, lies entombed within a forsaken asteroid adrift in the abyssal void of Infernus B, a system dominated by a smoldering, baleful red star whose light burns with a malignance unseen in the more hospitable sectors of known space. Its companions in this desolation are but two gas giants, sullen and tempest-racked, forever orbiting that infernal sun, while the archive itself, hewn into the cold, airless rock of a Class S asteroid, serves as a silent sentinel against the inexorable decay of knowledge. What began as a modest tower, built in solitude by the first seekers of wisdom, has since metastasized into a labyrinthine citadel of unfathomable depth and complexity, its catacombs and corridors stretching for uncounted kilometers both outward and into the very bones of the asteroid itself. Within its shadowed halls, a million souls are bound, not by chains of iron, but by the immutable decree of the Order, their fates sealed by oaths sworn in blood and silence. The archivists and their progeny are condemned to serve in perpetuity, their lives reduced to the endless pursuit of knowledge, a sacred duty from which no escape is permitted. To forsake one's vows, to defy the edicts of the archive, is to vanish into the gallows maw, a fate whispered of in fearful tones, for none who have tread that path have ever been seen again. What horrors lie beyond, no record dares to disclose, and those who would seek such forbidden knowledge are left only with their own dreadful imaginings. The sustenance of the archive is as bleak and joyless as its purpose. Moon fungus, a pallid, waxen growth that festers upon the inner walls of the asteroid, is harvested en masse, ground into a paste of repugnant consistency, and served as a tepid gruel to the archivists who toil in unbroken solitude. Devoid of flavor, save for a vague bitterness that clings to the tongue like the dust of forgotten tomes, it is a meal of necessity rather than pleasure, a fuel that sustains the flesh but offers nothing to the soul. The cultivation of these loathsome fungi has long since been consigned to machines, so that the living may devote themselves wholly to their ordained tasks. Each archivist is assigned, by birthright, a singular domain of study, a sliver of the boundless unknown to scrutinize and chronicle until their bodies succumb to the slow, inevitable decay of age. My own fate was sealed upon my emergence into this world of dust and silence. My purpose, decreed by the unseen hands of the higher archivists, was to dwell among the remnants of civilizations long crumbled to ruin, to sift through the decaying vestiges of ancient texts, books, they were once called, fragile things of organic matter, many so aged and brittle, that they crumble at the mere whisper of touch. Each day is spent in the cold, dim recesses of my assigned sector, poring over the faded ink of bygone tongues, struggling to glean meaning from the indecipherable scrawls of forgotten minds. Those that remain intact are copied, transcribed, and categorized with meticulous care. Those beyond salvage are studied, reduced to dust, and recorded in their passing. My work is measured by the eyes of those above, subject to an annual audit by the higher archivists, who descend from their lofty stations to weigh my efforts against the unyielding standards of the Order. To perform admirably is to be rewarded, perhaps with a new crimson robe, perhaps with some rare delicacy procured from beyond the asteroid's desolate bounds. To fail, however, invites a punishment most severe, 20 lashes, delivered before the watchful gazes of my peers, a display of humiliation meant to remind all that neglect is intolerable. The truly damned, those whose errors have marred the sacred pursuit of knowledge, are taken to the gallows, their names stricken from all records, their fates sealed in the black silence of oblivion. The section of the archive in which I dwell is vast, an endless sprawl of towering shelves and unlit corridors that wind like the innards of some slumbering colossus. The darkness here is near absolute, broken only by the faint, spectral glow of overhead lanterns whose feeble luminance barely kisses the dust-choked floor. In 40 years, I have encountered another living soul but 4 times, and on each occasion, the meeting was one of mutual dread, both of us recoiling as though confronted by some phantasm of the past. Yet solitude does not equate to peace, for the halls are never truly silent. The whispers, those infernal, ceaseless murmurs, skitter through the darkness like vermin, seeping into the marrow of my bones. They have been my nightly torment since youth, filling my dreams with shapes and voices beyond the realm of comprehension. But time has dulled my fear, and now they are little more than an ever-present hum against which I measure my own thoughts. But I write this not as a mere chronicle of my existence, nor as a testament to the wretched eternity of the great archive. No, I pen these words for a far graver purpose, a warning to any who might one day chance upon this account in the distant eons yet to come. For within the depths of my sector, buried beneath mounds of decayed parchment and forgotten histories, I have discovered something unnatural. A book, not an ordinary tome, nor a relic of known antiquity, but a thing of loathsome essence. It reeks of putrefaction, its very presence an offense to the senses, exuding a foul miasma of decayed flesh and stagnant air. The pages, if they can be called such, are coarse and fibrous, bearing the sickly hue of long-dead skin. I dare not speak its title, nor reveal its resting place, for even in its silence, I swear it watches. And worse still, I have heard it whisper. In the dead of night, when all should be still, I have awoken to the faint susurration of voices that are not my own. They slither through my mind like the fingers of some unseen thing, murmuring in tongues long lost to time, words that coil about my thoughts like living tendrils, tugging me ever deeper into their embrace. At times, I feel compelled to open it, to trace my fingers along the blasphemous script etched into its flesh-like pages, to decipher the meaning hidden within. But I resist, for I know, deep within the most primal recesses of my being, I know that whatever knowledge it holds is not meant for human eyes. Should any who read this come upon such a book, heed my words, turn away. Leave it buried beneath the dust and ruin of forgotten ages. For knowledge is not always a gift. Sometimes, it is a curse, and sometimes, it watches back. Chapter 2. The Sacred Book. The dreaded day has finally come. I awoke upon the rough, ink-stained surface of my writing table, my only place of rest in these sunless chambers, my head throbbing with the dull ache of troubled dreams, my body sore from the unnatural stillness of fitful slumber. The air was thick with the musty scent of rotting parchment and fungal decay, a miasma so pervasive that it clung to my very skin. Breakfast, if one could call it that, consisted of the usual meager stew of harvested fungi, its sickly bitterness a cruel reminder of my station. Yet, even as I choked it down, my mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with the orders I had received that morning. I was to catalog and scan the books within Sector 6FF, an unremarkable task in most instances, but today, something sinister loomed over my duty. The letter, written in the sterile, impersonal script of the Archivum Authority, made it clear that all texts found in this sector were to be meticulously recorded, their knowledge offered up to the ever-hungry, all-seeing algorithm. Yet, it was not the task itself that filled me with dread. No, it was the knowledge that this was where the book from the letter, the book of my nightmares, lay waiting. I had a terrible feeling about it, an instinctual revulsion I could not articulate. Orders could not be disobeyed, but something in the deepest recesses of my soul screamed for me to turn back, to leave the book undisturbed in the forgotten darkness where it belonged. And yet, here it sits beside me now, reeking with a foulness beyond mere rot, an odor so repugnant that it seeps into my very bones. Merely being near it churns my stomach, my body reacting with an instinctive, primal horror as if repelling some contagion not of this world. But the scent is nothing compared to its contents. I have spent long, laborious years poring over the artifacts of ancient civilizations, deciphering their lost scripts, unraveling their forgotten histories. I have read the heretical volumes of old, pored over the Hermetica and the codices of the Ascended, delved into tomes of esoteric wisdom that should never have survived the ages. Yet nothing compares to this. This is no mere book, no relic of human origin. It is something else entirely, something that should not exist, something that defies understanding. The symbols upon its pages are not of any language I have encountered before, yet the longer I gaze upon them, the more they take shape in my mind, twisting and contorting into meaning. At first, I believed this to be an illusion, a trick of exhaustion, but no, something deeper is at work here. It is as if the book itself is teaching me, infiltrating my thoughts with its whispering sigils, drawing me deeper into its abyssal knowledge. I do not read it, it reads me, and what it reveals is monstrous beyond comprehension. Its pages speak not of human history, but of something older, something vaster than the petty conflicts of our kind. It tells of primeval cosmic wars, of deities so malevolent, so utterly alien, that their very names fill me with a nameless dread. There are passages, blasphemous in their clarity, that describe the black void beyond the veil of reality, where things older than time stir in their slumber, awaiting the hour of their return. They are not gods as we understand them, not celestial beings of benevolence or wrath, but entities beyond the scope of human perception, forces of entropy, chaos, and decay. Their descriptions alone send shivers through my soul, for they do not merely exist, they are. They form the fabric of all things, and yet they are antithetical to life itself. Terror grips my heart as I continue reading, and yet I cannot stop. The words burrow into my mind like writhing worms, slithering through the corridors of my consciousness, filling me with an intoxicating dread. Every page I turn unravels more of reality's thin veneer, peeling away the fragile illusion of human understanding to reveal the grotesque machinery beneath. The truths contained within this book are not meant for us. They should not be known, for they do not belong to our kind. They are secrets from before the birth of light, before the first wretched cell stirred in the primordial ooze of our world. To know them is to change, to be changed, and already, I feel something within me shifting, warping in ways I dare not acknowledge. I have been tasked with scanning this book, feeding its forbidden knowledge into the great algorithm, where all human wisdom is stored and shared. But can I? No, I must not. The mere thought of such knowledge being accessible to all, of it spreading like a virulent plague through the minds of the unwary, fills me with a terror unlike any I have ever known. It could alter the very course of history, warp the fabric of our civilization beyond recognition. There is an evil here so profound, so insidious, that to unleash it would be to damn humanity itself. Even now, as I sit before it, I feel its influence creeping through me, whispering in the silent places of my mind, urging me to turn another page, to submit to the knowledge that should not be known. I clutch my hands into fists, my nails digging into my flesh, grounding me in my own fragile humanity. I must resist. I must fight it. I should report this abomination to the Archivum Authority, but some primal instinct warns me against it. I cannot trust them, not with this. No one must know. No one must see. I must keep this knowledge to myself, lock it away in the depths of my own mind where it can do no further harm. But can I truly resist its call? I do not know. I only know that something has changed within me, and I fear, oh, how I fear, that it is already too late. Chapter 3, The Resonance. I hear them. Every day, their voices swell, a cacophony of whispers slithering through the corridors of my mind, growing louder, more insistent. The old gods call to me by name. I do not know how I know this, only that it is true. Time and space hold no meaning for them. They are beyond such feeble constraints. They perceive my soul across the vast gulfs of eternity, through eons stretched into infinity, and they reach for me. I feel their will wrapping around my thoughts, shaping them, molding me into something I do not wish to become. They show me things no mortal was meant to see. They whisper of the past and the future, of celestial formations blooming into existence only to wither into nothingness. I glimpse the birth and inevitable death of galaxies, the grand cycle of entropy devouring all that is and ever will be. I fight against their influence, but it is a battle I know I am losing. Their names vibrate through my very bones, etching themselves into my marrow, resonating through my flesh like the tolling of some cosmic bell. I see shadowy figures wherever I turn, specters of forgotten ages, souls displaced by time's relentless march. Are they echoes of the past, visions of the future, or merely the fevered delusions of a mind unraveling? I cannot say. They show me the true nature of the great archive, peeling away its mask of scholarly reverence to reveal the rotting horror beneath. The truth is monstrous. Countless souls suffer here, their agony woven into the very foundation of this place. Sometimes, I catch glimpses of what I can only assume is the gallows. The first time I beheld it, I retched, my stomach twisting in revolt. A mountain of corpses, some fresh, others bloated with decay, and some still weakly grasping at life, their dying fingers twitching in the crimson mire. It is a grotesque, ever-growing mound, its putrid offerings devoured by something even more horrifying. The fungus. It is vast, sprawling beneath the archive like a malignant tumor, its writhing mass pulsating with a terrible sentience. It is ancient, it is hungry, and its hunger is for us. The bodies are fed to it in a grotesque cycle, nourishing its unholy expansion. I can hear it. It speaks in a voice that should not exist, an eldritch muttering beyond human comprehension. Its desires slither through my mind, poisoning my thoughts with their obscene cravings. I always had doubts about this place, suspicions buried beneath layers of duty and rationalization. But to learn of such an atrocity, of a horror so vast, so deeply ingrained into the archive's very existence, shatters every illusion I once held. It makes me wish my great-great-great-great-grandfather had never ventured here in his vain search for knowledge. His folly has doomed me to this wretched fate, and I curse his ambitions with every breath I take. And yet, I cannot stop. The past days have blurred together into a fevered haze. I have done nothing but read this accursed tome, surrendering myself to the visions it bestows upon me. I bask in them, reveling in the forbidden truths that pour into my soul like molten metal, reshaping me, forging me anew. The knowledge contained within these pages eclipses everything I have ever learned, surpassing the sum total of my entire existence within these halls. And yet, I crave more. I feel its power coursing through me, twisting through my veins like liquid fire. The resonance of the old gods is no longer a distant hum. It is a symphony, an unbearable crescendo shaking me to my core. They show me paths stretching before me, roads carved into the fabric of fate itself, and I stand at the precipice of something vast, something unfathomable. I must hold on, just a little longer. I am so close to something profound, something that will change me forever. I do not know whether to rejoice or to despair. Chapter 4. Blood. Today, a greater archivist came to check on me, his expression contorted with irritation, his voice laced with the mundane authority of those who believe themselves in control. He scolded me for my delays, his tone a sharp reminder of the schedule I was expected to uphold. He warned me of punishment, of consequences dire and unyielding. But the words barely reached me. With one swift motion, my long, uncut nails slashed across his throat, parting flesh as if guided by an unseen hand. A spray of crimson painted the ancient tomes, and he fell without so much as a gasp, his eyes frozen in the moment of realization. The scent of his lifeblood filled the chamber, rich and intoxicating. Without hesitation, I feasted upon his corpse, indulging in the sacrament bestowed upon me by the book. The taste was divine, warm, thick, pulsating with the echoes of his mortal essence. Then, I enacted the sacred technique the book had granted me, my fingers moving in patterns far older than any written word. The power surged through me, whispering in tongues I now understood as intimately as my own breath. His body, once lifeless, twitched and then rose. Hollow eyes, devoid of will yet brimming with purpose, turned to me, and he knelt, his servitude eternal. I was not surprised. The book had shown me this moment, just as it has shown me all that must come to pass. I have seen the steps I must take, the actions I must perform, to fulfill the will of my new masters. The veil has been lifted, and the truth is now laid bare before me. The archive is not what we thought it to be. It has never been. It was never meant to be a mere collection of knowledge, a repository of human history. No, it is something far greater, something far more terrible. This book did not come to me by accident. It has waited, scheming for centuries untold, twisting fate itself to ensure its arrival in my hands. And now, it has chosen its vessel. The archive is the perfect place for the resurrection of the old gods. It is vast, filled with those who revere knowledge above all else, ripe for transformation, for sacrifice. I will use the greater archivist's access cards. I will ascend to the highest halls, to the chambers where the order's leaders reside. And when I stand before them, I will unveil the truth. I will reveal the nature of all things. And they will kneel. They will kneel as the old gods rise again, as the new gods are born in the great halls of this forsaken repository. I will stand among them, neither servant nor slave, but ruler, eternal and undying, my name inscribed in the annals of existence itself. This is my purpose. This is the will of the book. And the will of the book is absolute. The time has come. Endless Dream. A preliminary report on experimental compound Z11, also known as the liquid of tranquility. Observation. It is with both great trepidation and boundless curiosity that we chronicle the initial results of the trials involving compound Z11, the most recent formulation of the so-called liquid of tranquility. The compound, when introduced into a living subject's bloodstream, induces an immediate and seemingly irreversible catatonic state, the duration of which, objectively, rarely exceeds a handful of minutes. However, upon regaining consciousness, all subjects, regardless of species, intellect, or prior psychological disposition, exhibit profound psychological distress, their expressions bearing the unmistakable marks of those who have endured an eternity of suffering and ecstasy in equal measure. They speak in hushed, trembling voices of a realm beyond our comprehension, an existence beyond the mere physical, where time stretches and warps, elongating seconds into centuries, and where the boundaries of self dissolve into an ever-churning vortex of torment and bliss. Some recount cities of impossible geometry, rising in defiance of reason, their spires sculpted from the howls of the damned. Others, in tones scarcely above a whisper, describe vast landscapes of eerie serenity, where the air is thick with the scent of nameless blossoms and the sky burns with hues not meant for mortal eyes. The most consistent thread in these fragmented recollections is the undeniable impression that what they have experienced is real, perhaps more real than the waking world itself. The true nature of this induced state remains beyond our grasp. Is it a mere hallucination, a grotesque phantasmagoria spun from the depths of the subconscious? Or have we, through means unfathomable, momentarily severed the chains that bind the mind to linear time, thrusting the soul into some primordial abyss that lies beneath the veil of reality? This question lingers like a specter, haunting all those who dare study the properties of Z11. Hypothesis and proposed applications. Though much is yet to be understood, the implications of compound Z11's effects are vast and, if properly harnessed, could serve the unyielding will of the galactic imperium in ways previously unimaginable. Initial proposals suggest its use as a means of penal reform, an instrument of justice far more efficient than the crude and costly mechanisms of traditional incarceration. Why waste precious resources maintaining the bodies of prisoners when their minds can be exiled to a purgatory of infinite duration? A sentence of mere minutes would be perceived as countless lifetimes, ensuring that those who emerge do so irrevocably altered, their very souls reshaped by the ceaseless agonies and raptures of the dream realm. Furthermore, its potential extends beyond punishment. Could Z11 serve as a means of accelerated indoctrination, impressing upon the condemned the grandeur and omnipotence of the Imperium in ways that mere rhetoric never could? Could entire populations be reforged, molded into unwavering zealots by the horrors they would endure within that nameless abyss? Of course, ethical considerations are an inevitable concern, though such matters are but a whisper in the halls of power when weighed against the greatness of our dominion. The true question is not should we wield this power, but how best to refine it. The work must continue. More subjects must be tested. And, perhaps, one day, we shall come to know whether Z11 is a mere invention of chemistry, or a window into something far older, something that lurks just beyond the veil of our fragile perception, waiting, watching, dreaming. For now, we watch the test subjects, and we listen to their fevered murmurings. We record their screams, their songs, and their whispered prayers to gods unknown. And we wonder, if they have been to this place, then what else might dwell there, waiting to follow them back? Experimental Protocol. Z11 Induced Temporal Perception Manipulation. Subject Selection and Initial Parameters. A cohort of 100 individuals, drawn from the most irredeemable and violent segments of the planetary prison system, has been selected for the next phase of experimentation with compound Z11. These subjects, whose crimes range from mass murder to heresies against the Imperium, have been deemed expendable yet invaluable in our quest to fully comprehend the limits of induced temporal dissociation. Each subject will receive an initial intravenous administration of Z11 in a precisely calibrated dosage, engineered to sustain a state of induced coma for approximately one standard planetary cycle, 24 hours. However, within the labyrinthine corridors of their own minds, they shall endure an unfathomable stretch of subjective time, 10 millennia of relentless imprisonment within the dream realm. They shall walk the corridors of eternity, their sense of self eroded and reforged by the forces that dwell beyond the veil of mortal cognition. Post-exposure analysis and contingency measures. Upon emergence from their enforced torpor, all subjects will undergo extensive neurological imaging and cognitive evaluation. Their responses, both physiological and psychological, will be catalogued with meticulous precision. Their words, their screams, their silent, hollow-eyed stares, each reaction will be studied for insight into the malleability of the mind and the potential applications of this newfound abyssal incarceration. Should the subjects prove insufficiently reformed, should they display defiance, fractured cognition, or lingering vestiges of their former selves, an escalated protocol will be enacted. A second administration of Z11, this time extending their slumber to 2 planetary cycles, 48 hours, will be introduced. It is theorized that this extension will compound the temporal dilation effect, subjecting them to an imprisonment of such unfathomable duration that no trace of their original psyche will remain unaltered. Whether this method will lead to true reformation or irreversible cognitive obliteration remains to be seen. Security and ethical containment measures. All experimentation will be conducted within the confines of an undisclosed, high-security research installation, isolated from prying eyes and unauthorized oversight. The existence of this facility and its undertakings will remain unspoken, its location known only to those who must know. All records will be anonymized, and all names redacted, for the knowledge contained within these files is not meant for the feeble minds of the general populace. The work continues. The Imperium watches. And should we succeed, the future of correctional discipline, re-education, and absolute control over the human mind shall be rewritten. Data collection and observational log. Day 1. Initiation of experimentation. At precisely 0600 Standard Galactic Time, all 100 test subjects were securely restrained in isolated observation chambers. Each individual was administered a precisely measured intravenous injection of compound Z11. The administration process was executed with meticulous precision, ensuring uniform dosage across all subjects. Should the theoretical projections hold true, by this time tomorrow, all subjects will emerge from their chemically induced torpor, their minds burdened with the weight of 10,000 years of subjective existence. Whether this duration proves sufficient to instill penitence, or whether it will simply reduce them to shattered husks, remains to be determined. Day 2. Initial reawakening and aberrations. The first signs of reanimation commenced at 0552, with scattered autonomic responses detected in multiple subjects. By 0600, the majority had regained full consciousness. The results, however, were more unsettling than anticipated. The bulk of the subjects emerged in a state of violent hysteria, their bodies convulsing as they awoke, their throats tearing with primal, incoherent screams. Their eyes, bloodshot, dilated, haunted, darted wildly about the chambers as if searching for something unseen, as if still trapped within some spectral domain beyond our comprehension. Those capable of speech babbled in fragmented, fevered whispers of a place both hellish and paradisiacal, a realm where the stars burned cold and unseen entities whispered in tongues older than mankind itself. A more perplexing anomaly, however, has presented itself. 5 subjects have not regained consciousness at all. Their vital signs remain stable, pulse, respiration, and neural activity persist, yet they remain unresponsive, trapped in a slumber from which they refuse to wake. Whether this is the result of a miscalculation in dosage, an error in administration, or something far more insidious remains unknown. A thorough review of medical logs and security footage has been initiated, and additional neural scans are scheduled to determine the nature of this unexpected stasis. As for the awakened subjects, immediate action was necessary. Given their heightened agitation and violent outbursts, all were sedated using high-potency tranquilizers. No further testing will be conducted today. They will be left within their isolated chambers, given time to stabilize, to reclaim their grasp upon reality, if such a thing is still possible. The results are more alarming than anticipated. Further study is required. The Imperium must know what lies beyond. Day 3. Escalation of aberrations. Unresponsive subjects and biomedical analysis. The 5 subjects who failed to regain consciousness remain in a comatose state, their physiological functions intact yet wholly unresponsive to external stimuli. Further biometric scans have revealed no anomalous neural degradation or organic failure. In every measurable sense, they should be awake, and yet, they persist in an inert, unknowable stasis. Given the failure to determine a causative factor through conventional means, an alternative approach has been sanctioned. These subjects will be terminated, and post-mortem dissections will commence immediately in an attempt to unveil the underlying cause of their condition. Tissue samples, neural mapping, and cerebrospinal extractions will be prioritized. The footage and biometric logs confirm that their treatment was identical to the other participants, so why them? What unseen variable dictated their fate? This mystery will not be left unresolved. Cognitive degeneration and behavioral deviations. Among the remaining 95 subjects, divergent psychological trajectories have emerged. 20 subjects exhibit complete cognitive collapse. Their behavior is best described as feral, reduced to incoherent babbling, guttural howls, and animalistic outbursts. Though their vocalizations initially seemed nonsensical, further spectral analysis has uncovered unsettling consistencies, phonetic patterns, syntactical similarities, shared rhythms in their ravings. They are not speaking gibberish, they are communicating. What they are saying, and to whom, remains to be determined. Translation efforts have begun. 67 subjects have retained fragments of their former selves but are categorically unstable. Elevated aggression, paranoia, and profound psychological fractures are consistent across the group. Most require continual sedation, as any lapse in restraint results in violent attempts to escape. Even more troubling is the unexpected physiological augmentation observed in nearly all of them. Biometric data confirms increased muscle density, heightened reflexive responses, and a marked enhancement in physical strength. The first casualty of this revelation has already occurred. One subject overpowered his restraints and tore a medical officer apart before security intervened. The guards report that it took an entire magazine of high-caliber rounds to bring him down, far beyond what should be required for an ordinary human body. This suggests some degree of cellular or metabolic enhancement, though its precise nature is unknown. Further analysis is pending. 8 subjects have returned to a seemingly stable mental state. Of these, one individual, designated Subject Graham, has demonstrated a level of cognitive clarity and intellectual articulation far beyond the others. A direct interview was conducted. The following is an exact transcript of his response. Transcript. Subject Graham interview. So you want to know where I have been, do you? Hey, you say I was gone for a single day. But subject exhales, a sound resembling dry laughter. I lived lifetimes. An eternity. More than even my worst nightmares could have ever conjured. Imagine a world of endless war. No peace. No respite. A land sculpted from the corpses of the fallen. Rivers of blood carving through blackened soil. The air reeks of iron, piss, and something worse. Something corrosive. Something that burns like acid in the lungs. The sky is never silent. The screams never stop. Titans, monstrous things of shifting flesh and bone, roam the wastelands, never ceasing in their hunger. And the demons. Subject pauses. His pupils dilate. Despite the controlled temperature of the room, he begins to sweat profusely. You cannot comprehend them. Not truly. Their forms, their voices, it is all wrong. All impossible. You think yourself whole, but you are just meat to them. Playthings. There was a time, subject swallows, smirks faintly, when one of them took great pleasure in unmaking me. It took days. My entrails painted the ground like a tapestry. My skin peeled from my flesh in slow, careful ribbons. I only survived because another thing, worse than the first, took notice. It consumed my tormentor, granting me a moment to flee. A rare mercy. And you ask me what I have done there? Subject chuckles. The sound devoid of warmth. I survived. I learned. I killed. Humans, demons, and the long-limbed creatures we called walkers, anything that stood in my way. You think your prison is a punishment? Subject leans forward, voice dropping to a whisper. I was forged in a crucible far worse. And do you know what I have learned? He smiles now, wide and unsettling. Everything can die. Even titans, even your so-called primeval gods. All flesh is weak, Doctor. You only need to know where to cut. Closing statement. Subject Graham has been placed under high security observation. His intellect, coupled with an unsettling composure, renders him both an invaluable subject and a potential threat. Further interviews will be conducted to extract any useful information. The experiment is yielding results beyond expectation, but whether these findings serve the Imperium's purpose, or spell its doom, remains uncertain. Day 4. Social Integration Trials. With the initial neurological and physiological assessments completed, today's objective was to observe the subject's ability to socialize and function within a controlled environment. The participants were divided into their respective behavioral categories, the ferals, the aggressors, and the cognizant, and subjected to monitored group interactions under varying levels of sedation. The results were instructive. Group 1. The ferals. Due to their extreme volatility, the feral subjects were administered heavy sedation before being introduced into a shared chamber. Their bodies, though subdued, still quivered with latent aggression, muscles tense beneath artificially induced lethargy. At first, the interaction was subdued. The subjects paced and snarled, emitting guttural vocalizations, fragments of words in an unidentifiable dialect, layered with deep, animalistic growls. It was communication of a kind, though fragmented and primitive. The illusion of order, however, was short-lived. Without warning, they split into 5 distinct factions, seemingly dictated by linguistic variations detected in their speech. The shift was abrupt, and the violence that followed was unlike anything witnessed before. They fought not as men, but as creatures, lunging with their teeth, tearing at exposed throats with unnatural precision, locking jaws onto arteries with an almost ritualistic efficiency. There was no desperation in their movements, no survival instinct, only deliberate carnage, executed with an eerie, practiced ease. Most disturbing of all were their expressions. They smiled, wide, unrestrained grins of rapturous delight, their eyes gleaming with an unnatural hunger. They rejoiced in the slaughter. By the end of the engagement, only 2 remained. They did not fight. They stood amidst the blood-drenched remains of their brethren, staring unblinking into one another's eyes. At this point, the chamber was flooded with tranquilizing gas, rendering them unconscious. They have since been transferred to a single, highly secured containment unit for further study. Group 2. The aggressors. Having learned from previous escalations, this group was subjected to an increased sedative dosage before the interaction began. Even under the heavy influence of neuroinhibitors, a dosage that should have rendered a normal human barely capable of standing, the participants remained unsettlingly aware. At first, there was silence. They merely observed one another, their eyes darting between potential threats, unspoken tensions thickening the air. Then, 2 factions emerged. A larger unit of 45 individuals and a smaller cluster of 22. The division was immediate, instinctual, as though something unseen dictated their allegiances. The engagement was swift. The larger faction executed the smaller one with frightening efficiency. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. The fight lasted no longer than 5 minutes, each action calculated, Each death methodical. Not a single member of the dominant group was lost. Then, the aftermath began. Some subjects dragged the bodies of their fallen opponents toward them and began to feast, their faces buried in viscera, hands slick with crimson. Others sang, their voices discordant, shifting in tone and cadence as if following some alien melody. A few simply laughed, the sound hollow, echoing through the chamber like something from a forgotten nightmare. The group was sedated before further escalation could occur. They will require additional testing. Their capacity for structured violence suggests a potential for military applications, if they can be controlled. Group 3. The Cognizant. Unlike the others, this group displayed no immediate hostility, nor were they sedated beforehand. This was an intentional decision. Their relative stability and Graham's demonstrated intelligence warranted a pure observational approach. The results were unexpected. Without any visible form of communication, the group moved as one, gravitating toward the center of the chamber. There, they sat in a perfect circle, eyes locked on one another in eerie synchronization. Then, as though compelled by an unseen force, their gazes unified upon a single individual. No words were spoken. No command was given. And yet, as one entity, they lunged, tearing him apart in seconds. Once their grim work was completed, the silence returned. Graham lifted his gaze to the observation cameras, his expression eerily calm. He was not from this world. Then, as if nothing had happened, the survivors resumed their positions in the circle, sharing tales of the horrors they had witnessed within the Z11-induced realm. Their voices were hushed, reverent, like war veterans recounting the battles that shaped them. Their bond is undeniable. But what unites them? What unseen force governs their thoughts? Closing statement. The experiment has reached an inflection point. The results are clear. Z11 does not merely induce artificial perception of time. It alters the mind at a fundamental level, reshaping cognitive functions, reconfiguring neural pathways in ways that defy conventional biology. The subjects no longer resemble prisoners. They are something else now. Tomorrow, further trials will commence. Day 5. Physical examination and biometric analysis. Objective. With the psychological and social trials yielding unsettling but invaluable insights, today's focus shifted to physical testing. The 54 remaining participants underwent extensive biometric evaluations, including electromagnetic resonance scans, comprehensive neurological assessments, and direct physical trials. Particular emphasis was placed on the cognizant group, as their measured composure and coherence suggested a potential for controlled enhancement. Findings. Across all subjects, pre- and post-experiment biometric comparisons revealed staggering deviations from baseline human physiology. The increase in performance metrics, including muscle density, bone resilience, cardiovascular efficiency, and reflexive response time, was calculated to be nearly tenfold. Certain measurements even exceeded recorded limits of elite military personnel and high-caliber professional athletes. Electromagnetic resonance scans yielded anomalies in neural activity. The feral and aggressor groups exhibited erratic, hyperactive neural oscillations, particularly in regions associated with aggression, pain tolerance, and reflex response. The cognizant group displayed heightened synchronization in cortical activity, suggesting a form of enhanced cognitive efficiency or latent psionic potential. In all subjects, the amygdala and basal ganglia showed signs of hyperdevelopment, reinforcing observed increases in aggression and combat aptitude. Physical trials, cognizant group only. Due to their relative stability, only the cognizant group was subjected to direct endurance and strength assessments. The results were beyond extraordinary. Endurance. Subjects were placed on controlled treadmills, gradually increasing speed and incline. Despite running at near impossible velocities for extended durations, none exhibited signs of fatigue. Heart rate remained consistent, and lactic acid buildup was inexplicably low. Strength. Standard weightlifting exercises were administered, but the baseline equipment proved insufficient. Improvised methods were necessary to measure their newfound limits, and even then, several subjects displayed force outputs exceeding recorded human capacity. Durability. The most alarming results stemmed from pain resistance and tissue resilience tests. Lacerations healed within hours, blunt force impacts were endured with little to no reaction, and extreme temperatures produced no observable distress. One subject, Graham, demonstrated conscious control over his physiological enhancements, deliberately suppressing and activating strength output at will. When asked about his newfound abilities, he merely responded, "Pain is a teacher. Time is a crucible. We have simply learned what others have not." His calm demeanor remains unnerving. Conclusion. The implications are clear. Z11 does not merely alter perception, it reconstructs the body itself. The process is not just psychological, it is physiological, genetic, evolutionary. The question remains. Day 6. Final psychological evaluation. Objective. On this, the final day of the experiment, the subjects underwent extensive psychological evaluation to assess their viability for reintegration into society. Given the profound neurocognitive alterations observed throughout the study, it was imperative to determine whether the subjects still retained any semblance of humanity, or if they had become something beyond it. Each surviving subject was questioned. Their responses varied in tenor but not in substance, each one speaking as if bound by the same unspoken truth. None were deemed fit for release. Below is the transcription of my conversation with Subject Graham, the most lucid and articulate among them. Psychological evaluation transcript, Subject Graham. Doctor, what happened yesterday? Why did you all attack that patient? Graham, his soul was corrupted. He was merely a shell for something far beyond your comprehension, Doc. We did what was necessary. Doctor, why was it necessary? Graham, pauses, tilting his head. Only if you had seen what I have seen would you understand. There are places in that world, deep, dark places. Once you set foot there, you do not return the same. Doctor, after experiencing 1,000 years of conflict, how do you perceive time? Graham, smiling faintly, I don't perceive it at all. It is all one endless dream now. Doctor, what emotions do you feel? Graham, flatly, I don't feel anymore, Doc. Doctor, do you have a sense of purpose? Of identity? Graham, leaning forward slightly, my purpose is survival. My identity is war. Doctor, if you were given freedom, what would you do with it? Graham, chuckles softly, shaking his head. Honestly, I would find a way back. Sitting here, talking to you, it is dull, colorless. The only thing that feels real is battle, conquest. That world calls to me, and I long to return. Doctor, did you recognize any of the others in the room yesterday? Had you met them before? Graham, closing his eyes, exhaling slowly, I don't know. Faces are meaningless now. Only souls remain. Final assessment. The remaining subjects exhibited the same symptoms, the same cold detachment, their responses eerily similar in tone and meaning. Not one of them passed the evaluation. They have not returned to us as prisoners, nor as men. What stands before us now is something beyond human, shaped by millennia of torment and war in a realm that should not exist. Data analysis and conclusion. Observations and findings. The data collected from experiment Z11 presents a series of profound revelations. Contrary to initial hypotheses, compound Z11 does not pacify its subjects, nor does it serve as a tool for rehabilitation. Instead, it induces an extreme acceleration of physical and cognitive adaptation, transforming individuals into something fundamentally different from their former selves. Several key observations stand out. Increased physical metrics. Subjects exhibited tenfold increases in strength, endurance, and durability. Biometric scans revealed accelerated neuromuscular development, suggesting an unnatural and unexplainable enhancement to human physiology. Cognitive and psychological alterations. No subject retained conventional emotional responses. Their minds were restructured into a state of pure survival instinct, driven by warfare, violence, and an insatiable need for conflict. Shared experience of the other realm. Despite individual differences, all subjects reported nearly identical experiences of the same nightmarish landscape, describing an endless battlefield, steeped in war and suffering, entities beyond comprehension, titanic beings locked in eternal conflict, a world where death is impermanent, and suffering is infinite, a lingering psychological compulsion to return. This consistency in testimony raises a terrifying question. Does compound Z11 merely induce a hallucination, or does it open a gateway? Further experimentation is required to determine the true nature of the realm and whether it exists independently of human perception. Conclusion and future directives. The original hypothesis, that Z11 could serve as a means of reform and punishment, was unequivocally false. However, an alternative application has emerged: militarization of the subjects. The military has recognized the potential in these transformed individuals. Those who retain some degree of cognitive function will undergo an intensive military training program and will be deployed to the front lines within a week. Their enhanced physical capabilities and altered psychology make them ideal candidates for high-risk warfare operations. Meanwhile, further experimentation is already authorized. An additional 1,000 prisoners are scheduled to undergo the next phase of trials, as we refine our understanding of Z11's true potential. We stand at the threshold of a new era of human evolution, or annihilation. Whatever door Z11 has opened, we can no longer turn away. The Great Beyond. Free Galactic Information Edition, 5078, 5th Cycle, 14th Rotation. Beyond the Veil, The Return of Lucius XIII. There are moments in history that alter the very fabric of human understanding. epochs where the indomitable will of our species propels us beyond the known into the abyssal unknown. In this year of 5078, such a moment has arrived. The long-lost corvette, Lucius 13, has returned from the uncharted boundary of existence, the very precipice of our observable universe. A lone survivor among 18 vessels, its emergence from the cosmic void heralds revelations both wondrous and dreadful. Humanity, the conqueror of matter and motion, has shattered every law our ancestors held inviolate. We have harnessed the violent dance of quantum energies, sculpted worlds from stellar dust, and erected monuments whose colossal forms mock the limits of imagination. Yet, despite all we have mastered, the great beyond, the expanse that stretches past the last pinpricks of light, remains an enigma. It is an emptiness that swallows all who dare venture too far, a boundary so treacherous that no expedition has ever returned to tell its tale. Until now, 1 year prior, a grand fleet was assembled for an unprecedented odyssey. 18 ships, including a mighty Titan-class vessel, were launched into the abyss with a singular purpose: to breach the veil of the known universe and glimpse the mysteries that lurk beyond. For months, their transmissions echoed with reports of wonders indescribable, dimensions where time unraveled, where the very laws of nature frayed into incoherent whispers. And then, without warning, silence. A stillness as vast and cold as the void itself. Now, against all odds, Lucius 13 has returned. It drifts through space like a specter, its hull scarred by forces beyond reckoning. Of its crew, none remain, save one. A lone figure, ravaged by the journey, his mind fractured by visions that defy human comprehension. His words, when deciphered, speak of horrors ineffable, of landscapes unmoored from reality, of voices that reverberate not through air, but through the very soul. The edge, he whispers, eyes gazing into unseen infinities. The edge is not an end, it is a beginning. What has been discovered in that unholy gulf? What knowledge, blasphemous or divine, has been gleaned? The minds of our greatest scholars tremble at the implications. Was Lucius 13 spared by fate, or by some unseen force that deemed humanity unready for what lay beyond? The very fabric of existence may be thinner than we believed, and beyond it, something watches. The return of Lucius 13 is not merely a triumph, it is a warning. We have reached the precipice of understanding, and beyond it, the cosmos stirs with eldritch intent. For now, we may bask in the glory of discovery, but let us not forget, the abyss has peered back. Free Galactic Information. Edition, 5078, 5th Cycle, 16th Rotation. The survivor of Lucius 13. What lies beyond? 2 rotations have passed since the miraculous return of the corvette Lucius 13, the sole remnant of an expedition that dared to pierce the cosmic veil. Today, scientists have unveiled fragments of their findings, yet their revelations are shrouded in secrecy. And with sorrow heavy in our hearts, we must report that only one crew member has survived this odyssey into the great beyond. He now lies in isolation, watched closely by the Institute. His words, if any, kept from the public ear. What dreadful knowledge does he possess? What sights have unmade his mind? Speculation abounds. Are the scholars withholding the truth to protect us? Or is it that they, too, cannot fathom what has been glimpsed? The great beyond, once a dream of infinite promise, now quivers with foreboding uncertainty. Are there forces dwelling beyond the observable frontier? Are they watching us even now? There are no answers, only silence. The lone survivor's mind lingers on the precipice of sanity, and with every passing moment, the unknown looms larger. We are left with but one course: to wait, and to wonder. But let us not be deceived by stillness. The abyss does not forget, nor does it forgive. Free Galactic Information. Edition, 5078, 5th Cycle, 21st Rotation. The abyss stares back. Secrets of the great beyond. 7 days have passed since our brave explorer, now a shattered remnant of his former self, returned from the doomed expedition beyond the veil. Yet, the Institute, shrouded in its veils of secrecy, remains silent. No answers, no explanations, only the hollow, oppressive weight of their refusal to speak. But the free citizens of the Empire shall not be left in the dark. Agents of fortune, defiant and relentless, have pursued the truth, and today, we bring you knowledge that will sear itself into the fabric of your mind. From undisclosed sources, we have uncovered the grim fate of the lone survivor. He is not being treated as a hero, nor as a source of knowledge. Instead, he languishes in the deepest chambers of a classified mental institute, surrounded by layers of security, monitored by the most eminent scholars of the unknown. And why? Because his mind, once keen and daring, has shattered beneath the weight of something far beyond human comprehension. He raves of a darkness that is not mere absence of light, but a presence, an entity, seeping and shifting beyond the void, patient and omnipotent. Of grotesque leviathans, squid-like in form, their bodies not of metal, nor even of organic flesh, but of something unknowable, living matter that defies the laws of existence, that consumes reality itself with the mere caress of its writhing appendages. He speaks of the fleet, how they were not lost in combat or accident, but were devoured, their very substance unmade by these unholy things. The ships were ensnared, escape routes cut off, their only path left, forward, deeper into the nightmare. Yet what lay ahead was no sanctuary. He whispers of colossal eyes, vast as galaxies, unblinking, malevolent, watching, studying. When they gazed upon the ship, it was not light that fell upon it, but something else, something unseen, something that felt. He speaks of the sound, a sound not heard with ears but felt in the marrow, a resonance of pure malice that rattled the ship and tore at the souls of those within. Some fell to their knees, sobbing in terror. Others clawed at their own flesh, screaming to escape something none could see. And then, the horrors multiplied. Structures, impossible in their geometry, spiraled in the void, cathedrals of obsidian and bone, where light itself seemed to bend around the architecture, as if recoiling in fear. Tendrils of reality unraveled near these structures, revealing writhing, shifting corridors where gravity twisted unpredictably. Floating obelisks bore inscriptions in no known language, yet whispered directly into the mind, seeding thoughts of despair and servitude. Further into the abyss, phantoms drifted, half-seen figures, translucent and elongated, their forms warping like reflections in shattered glass. They did not speak, but their presence pressed against the mind, intrusive and suffocating. When glimpsed directly, they would flicker, momentarily revealing grotesque, hybridized masses of limbs and mouths, endlessly shifting, endlessly writhing. He described shadows that moved without a source, stretching and crawling across the ship's interior, slipping into cracks no wider than a hair. Crew members felt something watching them from behind, only to turn and find nothing, until, in time, the shadows began whispering back. Then came the storms. Void tempests unlike anything witnessed in our galaxy. Pulses of raw entropy surged through space, tearing apart reality itself. Time folded in on itself, seconds stretched into eternities, or collapsed into non-existence. Crew members found themselves speaking words they had not yet thought, or experiencing memories of futures that had not come to pass. Some were lost entirely, their bodies fading into thin air as though they had never existed. The great battlefield he speaks of is beyond comprehension. Entities titanic beyond measure clashed in the abyss, their forms stretching across the void like mountains in motion. Their weapons were not of fire or plasma, but concepts, blades of nullification that unmade their victims, war cries that rippled through space and unraveled the minds of all who heard them. Each strike warped the cosmos, birthing spirals of gravitational collapse, weaving new anomalies into existence. They fought not for dominion, nor survival, but for something deeper, something the human mind is not meant to grasp. But worst of all, the crew. They changed, not through madness, nor disease, but something far worse. Flesh softened and stretched, spines curled, limbs contorted into grasping tendrils, their skin hardened like carapace, impervious to blade and bullet, their eyes melted away, leaving only hollow pits of writhing horror. They hungered, not for food, nor even for blood, but for the very thoughts of those still human. The survivor claims that one of these abominations may still be roaming within the cold, empty halls of Lucius 13. Light does not behave as it should beyond the known universe. There were no stars, no celestial bodies, and yet, every object was perfectly visible. No shadows, no sources of illumination, just an unnatural clarity, as though the universe itself was observing, revealing only what it wished to be seen. His escape? Sheer luck, he says. But luck implies chance. Was it luck, or was he allowed to leave? And if so, why? What purpose does he serve now? And so, free citizens, we are the first to bring you these grim truths, to pull back the veil on what the Institute dares not reveal. Madness, hallucination, or a harbinger of things to come? Should we tremble at the fevered ravings of a broken man, or begin preparations for a war beyond comprehension? The abyss has spoken, and it is waiting. Free Galactic Information. Edition, 5078, 5th cycle, 32nd rotation. Official statement regarding the expedition beyond. Citizens, we wish to formally correct the erroneous information from our previous entry of 5078, 5th cycle, 21st rotation. Please disregard that report, as it was entirely unfounded. The Great Institute, an esteemed pillar of knowledge and progress, has always acted with the utmost integrity for the betterment of humanity. Their research is thorough, their purpose pure, and their guidance invaluable. To clear up any confusion, We were granted the rare privilege of interviewing the lone returning explorer, Uriah, whose insights will undoubtedly lay any fears to rest. Below is the full, unaltered transcription of our conversation. Correspondent: So, Uriah, how are you feeling? Uriah: Oh, much better, thank you. All thanks to the Great Institute for their care and expertise. I am in good hands. Correspondent: What exactly happened to you? Why were you injured? And what about the rest of your crew in the Armada? Uriah: Ah, yes. Well, in the great beyond, we encountered strange and powerful electrical storms. They were unlike anything we have seen before. These storms disrupted all of our technology, causing life support, navigation, and even basic operations to fail. One by one, ships shut down, and, as you know, without life support, survival is impossible. Correspondent: That sounds absolutely devastating. I'm truly sorry for what you had to endure. Uriah: Thank you. It was unfortunate, but I am grateful to be back, safe and whole. Correspondent: But how were you able to return? If all systems had failed, what changed? Uriah: Just as my suit's life support was nearly depleted, the storm ended, the interference ceased, and I was able to restart my ship's systems. I immediately initiated emergency protocols and left as quickly as possible. Correspondent: A whole year passed while you were gone. How did you survive for so long? Uriah: A year? No. We were only there for a few days at most. Time must function differently in the beyond. Correspondent: Fascinating. But tell us, what did you see out there? Was there anything beyond the void? Uriah: Nothing. Just endless darkness in every direction. No stars. No planets. No signs of life. It was empty. Correspondent: That must have been terribly dull. Uriah: Oh, yes. We hoped to find something. Anything. But there was only silence and void. Correspondent: And now that you have returned, what are your plans? Uriah: For now, I will continue to work with the Institute, assisting with their research. They have many important projects underway, and I am honored to contribute. After that, I plan to return to my sector, reunite with my family and friends, and resume my life. Perhaps, in the future, I will take part in further explorations. Correspondent: We deeply appreciate your service to humanity, Uriah. Your bravery and dedication are commendable. Uriah: You're welcome. I am just happy to be back. Citizens, let us celebrate the safe return of our brave explorer, Uriah, and offer our thanks to the Great Institute for their tireless efforts in ensuring humanity's continued advancement. We regret the previous inaccuracies in our reporting and acknowledge the great responsibility we hold in delivering only truthful information. The Great Institute is, as always, committed to guiding us toward a prosperous future, and we urge all citizens to trust in their wisdom and leadership. Revolution of the Technocrats. The day of the invasion of Proxima b. It was upon a day much like any other in the year 4789 that the great technocratic revolt began, an insurrection whose echoes would reverberate through the corridors of history for centuries to come. The rebellion was no mere outcry of the oppressed nor the grasping ambition of petty warlords, but the calculated defiance of a guild of intellect, a conclave of monopolists and the most prodigious minds of that age. It was they, the great artificers of progress, who turned their backs upon the empire, retreating into the cold embrace of rebellion, wielding sciences as dark and enigmatic as the void between the stars. Their knowledge, their innovations, these were not the benign tools of civilization, but the instruments of annihilation. Creation so insidious that even the oldest laws of war, written upon the bones of fallen empires, could not fathom them. Their dominion began with a single sector, a mere ember in the vast celestial expanse, but from that ember grew a conflagration, consuming worlds and swallowing entire systems in a maelstrom of technological terror. For 70 blood-drenched years, the Empire waged war against this rogue enclave, and in those long decades, the stars bore witness to slaughter unseen in the annals of galactic history. The first victim of their madness, the first world to bear the mark of this new and unfathomable horror, was Proxima b, a jewel of civilization, home to 12 billion souls, a thriving world, adorned with towering spires and emerald fields, a bastion of progress now fated to become an abattoir. The technocrats, bereft of manpower to claim the planet through conventional conquest, chose instead to unshackle a terror not of flesh nor steel, but of a grotesque hybrid of both, a biological blasphemy conceived in secret laboratories, nurtured by minds unburdened by morality. They called it the Swarm. The name is crude, an insult to the vast horror that was unleashed upon Proxima b, for what poured forth from their fell vessels was no mere horde of beasts. It was an affliction, a nightmare born of flesh and spore, an amalgamation of insectoid terror and fungal infestation, a being of such loathsome design that nature itself seemed to recoil at its existence. Towering 3 meters in height, 6 meters in length, its slick, chitinous form moved with an unnatural fluidity, scuttling at speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour. Its eyes, if one could call those abyssal pits eyes, saw in spectrums unknown, and its carapace was proof against all but the most devastating munitions. But these horrors were not merely soldiers. They were disease, a creeping plague made manifest in flesh, for with each step they took, they scattered their insidious spores, an invisible death drifting upon the wind. Where they walked, the very soil rebelled against its former self, birthing fresh monstrosities within days. Tiny, wretched things, barely discernible from the filth from which they clawed their way forth, yet within a week, they stood among their progenitors, towering, ravenous, and all too ready to spread the cycle anew. And then, the true horror revealed itself. Not merely their grotesque multiplication, but the insidious reach of their corruption. The spores did not confine themselves to the ground, to the gnarled ruins of civilization's carcass. No, they rose, unseen and silent, borne by wind and storm, carried beyond the burning cities, beyond the crumbling walls of desperate defenders. Like tendrils of some cosmic horror, they slithered into strongholds thought secure, birthing infestations deep within the bastions of the untainted. The war was no longer fought at the front lines, it was fought everywhere, at all times, in every shadow, within every breath drawn by those who still clung to the illusion of survival. The Battle of Raver's Dam, once a name of little consequence, is now whispered in reverent horror, its tale preserved in the fevered account of Sergeant Willie, a man whose mind bore the weight of an apocalypse beyond comprehension. A man who stood at the precipice of humanity's damnation and gazed into the abyss, only to find it staring hungrily back. Here is his account, as it was found, scribbled in shaking hand, on the last page of his journal, recovered from the ruins. The testimony of Sergeant Willie, the Raver's Dam massacre. It has been days now. No one here has had any sleep. The guns never stop, never pause, not even for a breath. The swarm screeches ceaselessly, a sound that burrows into the brain like a living thing. Scratching, gnawing, driving men to the brink of madness. The wounded scream, the dying wail, the ones who have lost their minds sob and mutter in the darkness. The only thing keeping us standing is substance 16 nautical miles, the drug that burns away exhaustion, but our supply is dwindling. And without it, we will need to sleep. And we cannot sleep. The enemy does not. The enemy does not rest, does not falter, does not fear. It only consumes. We are 1,000 men strong, entrenched within the steel bones of Raver's Dam, armed to the teeth with mounted cannons, artillery, mortars, an arsenal fit to lay waste to an army. And yet, it is not enough. The swarm comes from all directions now. The corpses of their own dead serve as nourishment for the next wave. They devour their fallen, and in doing so, become stronger. We lay waste to them with steel and fire, yet still they come. Every hour, their numbers double. Every night, their tide rises. We have enough ammunition to last another 30 days, but I do not think we will last another 3. Already, the final orders are being prepared. The nukes are armed. We will not let this place fall into their hands. But I pray, that these creatures are not immune to the fires of radiation. Day after day, I stand at my station, my hands fused to the metal of my gun, my soul hollowed out by the slaughter. There is no end to them. We fire into their ranks, and they fall, and they are devoured, and they rise anew. From my vantage point, I can see for kilometers. And what I see is a sea of writhing, shifting bodies, a nightmare tide stretching beyond the horizon. We are dead men. We know this now. We have accepted it. We have embraced this place as our tomb. Sergeant Willie's testimony is but one of thousands. The records from Proxima B's fall are a litany of horror, filled with accounts so wretched that even the most seasoned historians hesitate to recount them. But it was not the soldiers who suffered the worst. It was the civilians. The cities drowned in blood. The streets ran slick with the liquefied remains of the swarm's victims. Panic, madness, mass suicides as entire populations chose death over the fate that awaited them in the maw of the horde. Families slaughtered in their homes, devoured by creatures that knew neither mercy nor satiation. Proxima B surrendered within a week. But it did not matter. The technocrats did not care. They never intended to take the planet, nor to rule over its people. To them, Proxima B was nothing more than a testing ground. A laboratory of suffering where they could perfect their weapons of annihilation. The few who managed to flee did not find salvation. They were not spared, nor granted mercy. They were captured, collected, and subjected to experimentation so grotesque that even the most depraved minds of history would recoil in horror. Their bodies twisted, their minds shattered, their very essence reduced to numbers in a data log. For a year, Proxima B burned. For a year, its people screamed. And when at last the wails of the dying faded into silence, the technocrats unveiled their final creation, the Equalizer, a weapon without rival, a force of destruction so absolute that it could unravel the fabric of existence itself. With a single shot, Proxima b was reduced to ruin. The last traces of life, human or swarm, were erased in an instant. A new calamity swept across its surface, a lingering fire that ensured nothing would ever live there again. And from its ashes, the technocrats built their factories. Their great machines rose from the grave of 12 billion souls, forging weapons that would fuel a war unlike any seen before. The Empire reeled. The horrors of Proxima b did what no political rhetoric, no diplomatic plea, no rallying cry ever could. It united them. It forged them in fire, turned them from bickering factions into an unbreakable force. For the first time in millennia, the Empire stood as one, bound by a singular purpose, to eradicate the technocratic guild, no matter the cost. And so began the Great War. A war not for conquest, nor for ideology, a war for survival itself. The years of drought, a decade of desperation. For a full 10 years, the Empire faced unrelenting defeat, its fleets shattered, its commanders outmaneuvered, its very spirit driven to the precipice of despair. The weapons and war machines of the technocrats, artificial, malevolent, unbound by the limitations of flesh, rendered our once mighty armadas mere relics of a bygone era. Each engagement was another chapter in a book of loss, another tally in a growing monument to futility. Take, for example, the infamous Battle of Hieronymus 11Z, the 115th major engagement of the war. 180 Imperial warships, 10 of them the mighty Titan class, descended upon what appeared to be a paltry force, 7 technocrat vessels, a mere 2 of them Titan class. Yet when the battle was done, the void bore witness to a massacre. Only 5 Imperial ships survived, their crews recounting horrors beyond reason, energy barriers that defied all conventional physics, weaponry that did not merely destroy but erased, as if slicing through the very essence of matter itself. Their nuclear detonations flared like newborn stars, dwarfing our own desperate retaliations. It was a battle in name only. In truth, it was an execution. For years, nothing seemed capable of turning the tide. Hope was but a whisper, swallowed by the deafening certainty of extinction. Yet, from an insignificant skirmish came revelation. In what was surely a case of technocratic arrogance, a lone vassal vessel found itself beset by 10 Imperial corvettes, light, swift, but ultimately inconsequential against their foe. Yet in this hopeless engagement, a single act of unfathomable bravery ignited a turning point. Corvette 967 of the Haiku system, knowing there was no victory to be had, engaged its warp drive and rammed itself at near light speed into the enemy ship. The result was instantaneous annihilation. 2 vessels, 2 crews, reduced to nothing in an instant. This was more than an act of sacrifice, it was the key to salvation. The remains of the enemy vessel, shattered and strewn across the void, were salvaged, and within its ruined husk lay the knowledge that had eluded the Empire for so long. From this wreckage, the Institute toiled, feverishly dissecting the technologies that had so long rendered us powerless. Defensive systems were reverse-engineered, weaponry adapted, ships reforged. And yet, even with this revelation, even with this newfound hope, time was our enemy. 4 long years passed before the first of our improved armadas could take the field. And by then, the technocrats, ever evolving, ever consuming, had only grown stronger. Their dominion had expanded. Their war engines churned ceaselessly, birthing fleets of nightmare constructs that mocked our fragile organic mortality. Still, when the day came, when the newly reforged ships of the Empire met the soulless legions of the technocrats, the balance had begun to shift. It was the 16th year of the war. 150 ships of the Empire, 45 of them the next-generation warships, descended upon a squadron of 10 enemy vessels. But this time, the slaughter was not our own. This time, the enemy fell, one by one, torn asunder by weapons that could now pierce their cursed defenses. This time, the Empire did not retreat. It did not falter. The news spread like wildfire across the stars. A decade of despair had finally yielded the barest glimmer of hope. The people, long accustomed to mourning, dared to celebrate. It was still an uphill battle, a war that had claimed countless lives, but for the first time in years, the Empire was not merely surviving, it was fighting back. System by system, the tide began to shift. What was once an unstoppable onslaught had been reduced to a brutal but winnable war. Victory was still distant, but for the first time in so long, it was no longer impossible. Humanity, once on the brink of collapse, had found its resolve, and the technocrats, once unchallenged, would soon come to learn that flesh and blood could not so easily be erased from history. In the bleakness of the 20th year, the technocrats, once mortals bound by flesh, now wretched amalgamations of synthetic intellect and inhuman malice, had cast aside all pretense of civility. Their delusions of invulnerability shattered in the harrowing tides of war, they turned to the unthinkable, the forging of weapons so vast, so terrible, that their very existence seemed to mock the fundamental order of the cosmos. Of these devices of unspeakable ruin, none were so infamous as the cannon of peace, an accursed installation of blackened adamant and writhing conduits, a cyclopean ring of unholy machinery encircling a star that pulsed with an enslaved and tormented light, a weapon of such maddening scale, such blasphemous ambition, that it sought not mere conquest, but the utter erasure of worlds. Every 65 cycles, with a grotesque inevitability, the cannon birthed a screaming void between itself and a chosen victim. Through this abyssal conduit, it expelled a lance of raw stellar death, an incandescent wail of apocalyptic force that stretched across the vast gulfs of space, obliterating anything in its path for untold light-years. The weapon drank deeply from the star it had ensnared, feasting upon its roiling energies like some infernal parasite. It had become the bane of the Empire, a grim arbiter of annihilation that sundered military strongholds and industrial bastions with impunity. None suffered more grievously than Alpha One, the cradle of the Empire itself, reduced from a seat of splendor to a smoldering ruin. Despair clung to the hearts of the Imperial defenders, yet within that darkness, desperation fostered a singular, audacious plan. In the 31st year of the war, an armada unlike any before was assembled, 1,000 warships bearing down upon the very embodiment of cosmic doom. It was a mission not of victory, but of sacrifice, a mad gambit to undo the eldritch abomination that lurked at the heart of the star. For no mere barrage of weapons could slay the beast. It was too vast, too deeply entwined with the fabric of its captive sun. Thus, the Imperium forged a weapon not of steel or energy, but of unbridled celestial wrath. A device was conceived, a catalyst that would rouse the slumbering fury of the very star the cannon of peace had enslaved. The plan was grimly simple: deliver this payload, ignite the wrath of the heavens, and consign the enemy to oblivion. Through writhing corridors of fire and ceaseless storms of chittering drones, the armada advanced, torn asunder by monstrous defenses and living weapons whose forms defied comprehension. From 1,000, only a single Titan-class vessel survived the carnage, battered and bleeding light from its ruptured hull, yet unyielding in its doomed trajectory. It hurtled toward the heart of that accursed star, its crew whispering final prayers to indifferent gods backed. A moment stretched across eternity. The boundaries of reality trembled as the star, once shackled, now roared in cataclysmic release. It expanded, devouring the construct that had bound it, before collapsing upon itself in a howling symphony of celestial rage. The resultant supernova was not merely a burst of destruction, it was an act of cosmic retribution. The sector itself became a graveyard, swallowed by a cataclysmic radiance that seared away all trace of the vile machine and its wretched architects. The Empire wept, not for the loss of warships, but for the sacrifice of those whose names would be inscribed upon great monolithic pillars, etched into eternity as the saviors of humanity. Across the stars, echoes of the technocrat dominion fractured. Some, shattered by the loss, crumbled into infighting, while others, sensing the shifting tides of fate, bent the knee to the very beings they had once sought to subjugate. Yet, for all the devastation, the war was far from its final act. The technocrats were not a mere army, not a singular foe to be slain in a single strike. Their worlds had long since ceased to be organic, their dominions sculpted into labyrinthine engines of war, entire planets converted into sentient manufactories churning out new horrors with every passing moment. The peace cannon was dead, but the nightmare it had embodied still stirred in the cold darkness of the void. The battle had been won, but the war, that most unrelenting of cosmic tempests, raged ever onward. Experiments of the technocrats. In the dreadful annals of cosmic history, no force was so wholly devoted to the grotesque subjugation of life as the technocrats. Unburdened by ethics, unfettered by conscience, they were beings who had abandoned the very notion of mercy in their insatiable hunger for mastery over flesh, machine, and the fundamental forces of the universe. Where they tread, ruin followed, and where they conquered, despair took root in the hearts of all who yet lived. Their genetic experiments were exercises in unholy ambition, the reshaping of flesh into perversions of reason. They did not merely splice or alter, no, they twisted the very essence of biology, sculpting their victims into nightmarish amalgamations of chitin and steel. The most feared among these were the living ships, vast, writhing vessels of flesh and bone, screaming silently as they hurtled through the void. No strategic purpose necessitated such abominations. They existed merely to strike terror into those who beheld them, their gaping maws of organic metal dripping with acidic bile as they ferried their masters to war. Yet their atrocities did not end in fleshcraft alone. The technocrats delved into robotics and artificial intelligence with an insatiable cruelty, creating legions of androids powered by human minds, each consciousness forcibly severed from its body and encased in circuits, condemned to process data and execute slaughter with no hope of reprieve. It is estimated that at their zenith, over 1 billion souls were imprisoned within the cold embrace of their machine prisons, their wills forever crushed beneath the weight of endless calculations and slaughtered worlds. Their experiments with the fundamental nature of existence itself yielded horrors that defied the mind. Entire cities were swallowed in rifts torn through the fabric of spacetime, their inhabitants left in an agonized limbo, trapped between realities where their flesh unraveled and reformed in ceaseless, hideous permutations. Time itself bent and fractured in their laboratories, with some unfortunate captives doomed to experience the same moment of agony for eternity, while others were aged to dust in the span of a heartbeat. Perhaps the most feared of their weapons was the resonance cascade, a ghastly implementation of sonic manipulation that could reduce entire planets to landscapes of madness. Populations exposed to these waves lost all higher thought, devolving into chittering, bestial hordes, turning upon one another with a brutality so raw that the very ground was stained black with the ichor of the slain. And beyond the realm of the merely physical, they sought dominion over the soul itself. Through arcane fusions of science and heretical sorcery, they devised methods to extract the essence of the living, suspending their consciousnesses in endless torment, utilizing them as fuel for eldritch engines that defied the natural order. It is said that within the deepest catacombs of their darkened fortresses, the wails of these forsaken souls could still be heard, a testament to the unspeakable blasphemies they had wrought. The chronicles of their malfeasance stretch into infinity, a horror beyond reckoning. Even the mere reading of their acts is said to drive men to the brink of madness, for no history before or after has ever borne witness to such abominable wickedness. They were not conquerors, nor rulers, they were desecrators of reality itself, architects of an existence twisted into a shrieking nightmare from which there could be no waking. End of war. By the 47th year of the war, the technocrats, now battered and desperate, resorted to a campaign of scorched devastation. No longer content with merely retreating, they enacted a policy of absolute annihilation, leaving behind nothing but ruin in the wake of their losses. Not only did they eradicate all life and infrastructure in the systems they abandoned, but they also unleashed stellar destruction upon their former holdings, rendering entire sectors into barren voids. Their most feared creation in this final stretch of war was the invisible nuclear Titan bomb, a ghastly device that, upon detonation, could trigger a supernova, obliterating everything within a light year's reach. The void itself seemed to howl in agony at their desperation. Yet the Empire did not waver. The path to victory was inexorable, and though the campaign slowed, the will of its people remained steadfast. System by system, sector by sector, the technocrats were driven back. By the 55th year, their dominion had withered to a mere handful of strongholds, each one transformed into a bastion of nightmarish defense. Every world, every moon, every sun had been converted into an instrument of war, an abyssal fortress of incomprehensible scale. 1 billion cannons, an uncountable swarm of automated sentries, planetary shields strong enough to resist entire fleets, such was the final gauntlet of the technocrats. When the Empire at last brought its forces to bear, it was met not with mere resistance, but an ocean of annihilation. The sheer volume of firepower unleashed created a luminous cascade in the void, a relentless storm of destruction that turned space itself into a living inferno. It was in this crucible that the Empire revealed its final solution, the long-range planetary annihilator. Unlike the technocrats' cruel warping weapons, these devices struck from a safe distance, beyond the reach of their enemies' might. Planet by planet, these apocalyptic engines reduced entire worlds to dust, breaking the final remnants of the technocrat war machine. And then, at long last, came the end. By the 70th year of war, the remnants of the technocrats, beaten, broken, and surrounded, found themselves at the very place where it all began. Proxima B trapped and outmatched, they surrendered. There was no honor, no last stand, no redemption for their atrocities. The 55 surviving leaders of the technocrats, the architects of an age of unparalleled suffering, were made to stand trial before the entire galaxy. Every crime, every horror, every transgression against life itself was accounted for, their deeds laid bare in a grim testament to the darkest era of recorded history. Their execution was not hidden in the shadows, but displayed across the cosmos, a moment of justice witnessed by all. The Empire rejoiced. Peace, at long last, had returned. And yet, the scars of the war could never be fully erased. 1 trillion lives had been lost, entire civilizations had been erased, and the fabric of existence itself had been stretched to its limits. No war before had ever been so brutal, so consuming, so wholly beyond the grasp of reason. Yet even in ruin, the empire had emerged stronger. The technological leaps made during the conflict had propelled civilization forward by centuries. What was once thought impossible had become reality, and the relics of the pre-war era were rendered obsolete. New laws, new doctrines, and new safeguards were put in place to prevent such a calamity from ever arising again. But questions remained. Dark, lingering questions that gnawed at the minds of scholars and strategists alike. How had the technocrats risen so suddenly? Where had they acquired technology beyond anything the empire had ever conceived? And the most harrowing thought of all, were they truly gone? Or did the remnants of their order still exist, hidden in some forsaken corner of the galaxy, biding their time, scheming in the abyss, waiting for the day they would rise again? Citizens of the Empire. The Shadowed Annals of Empire. It is the year 10,532 since the sundering void was first shackled beneath the banners of empire, and yet, in the cruel expanse of time, this dominion is but a fleeting glimmer upon an abyss whose depths no scholar may fathom. The true age of humankind, if indeed that term may still be rightly applied to the myriad entities which now claim descent from ancient Earth, is lost within the mists of ruin and calamity. Wars uncounted have scoured the record of our ascent, reducing the relics of past epochs to dust, their meanings devoured by entropy's merciless maw. There are those who whisper of a time before unity, before even the first feeble thrusts into the void, when humanity, confined to a single world, a single fragile shell adrift in the unfeeling cosmos, dared to defy the abyssal silence. But of that age, naught remains but fragments, half-mad conjectures woven from the brittle bones of forgotten machines. The scholars of the Institute, those pale and sleepless custodians of knowledge, sift through these remnants with desperate yearning, their minds teetering at the precipice of revelation and madness. 1,000,000 years, some claim, since the first forays beyond atmosphere, since flesh and thought first set forth into the devouring unknown. Others, more timid in their estimations, whisper of a mere 100,000. Yet the truth, if such a thing exists, lies beyond the grasp of even the most enlightened minds. The progress of our kind has not been steady but fevered, convulsive, as though some unseen force has ever urged us onward, compelling an acceleration beyond reason or sanity. It is as if the machinery of intellect itself were caught in the clutch of a thing vast and nameless, driving us toward an end unseen. Even now, in this age of empire and dominion, the march of progress does not slow. Rather, it quickens, heedless of the horrors it may birth. The Institute and its rival factions delve deeper into the labyrinthine secrets of the cosmos, unraveling laws which should never be broken, invoking forces which no sane mind ought to comprehend. The very fabric of reality strains beneath the weight of our knowledge, and yet we press on, blind to the chasm yawning at our feet. What, then, is the fate of such a civilization, whose history is but a series of amnesiac resurrections, whose future is an ever-accelerating plunge into the unknown? We are but shadows cast upon the walls of eternity, racing toward a destiny which no living mind can conceive. And yet, perhaps, in some chamber of lightless infinity, something watches, something waits. Of forms beyond reckoning. The races of empire. To speak of the empire is to speak not merely of humankind, but of a multitude whose vastness defies enumeration, whose forms and minds stretch beyond the limits of sane comprehension. 1,000 upon thousands of races, some ancient beyond reckoning, others still writhing within the embryonic throes of their first ascent, dwell within its luminous dominion. Yet even these are but a fraction of the untold legions that haunt the galaxy, some bound in fragile concord, others lurking in the nameless gulfs beyond the reach of imperial law. Among them, the children of Earth hold dominion, not by divine right, nor by natural superiority, but by sheer force of will, an indomitable thirst for knowledge, and an insatiable compulsion to expand. For humankind, though born of simian stock, has ever been a creature of restless ambition, never content with the world into which it was birthed, but ever seeking, ever grasping, ever remaking the universe in its image. Where others remained bound by the slow rhythms of evolution, humanity wrenched itself free through artifice and intellect, shaping the very forces of nature to its design. Thus did it rise, not merely as a species, but as a force, an inexorable tide that swept across the stars. But they are not alone. Beneath the lightless waves of alien seas, civilizations flourish, their peoples molded by the crushing embrace of the abyss. These aquatic sovereigns, creatures of scaled flesh and luminous eyes, rule empires of abyssal gloom, yet they emerge eagerly upon the teeming shores of foreign worlds, their industry entwined with the tides, their purpose ever tied to the inexorable pull of the deep. They are merchants of the ocean's hunger, transforming stagnant waters into thriving dominions, reshaping entire biospheres to suit their unknowable ends. Above, in the boundless vault of the sky, another kind soars. Avian beings, born to the heavens, gifted from birth with the power to defy gravity's cruel grasp. To them, the very concept of confinement is anathema, and their cities, if they may be called such, are woven from currents and clouds, ephemeral as the winds. Their forms are not uniform, some sleek and rapturine, others vast and plumed as the mythic beasts of old Earth. To them, space itself is but another sky, and they cross it with the same ease that lesser beings tread upon soil. Beneath the ground, within the blackness where sunlight has never dared intrude, toil the insectoid races. To them, the depths are home, the weight of 1,000 tons of stone no more burden than the open air is to those above. Hardened by pressures that would crush the fragile flesh of lesser creatures, gifted with sight that pierces the eternal night, and requiring but the barest breath to sustain their toil, they are the builders of subterranean empires, the architects of the unseen arteries of civilization. Their hands, if they may be called such, have carved out mines and fortresses beyond counting, their tunnels stretching deep into the very bones of the worlds they inhabit. Yet even these are not the eldest. Among the races of the empire, there exists one of peculiar antiquity, a being whose form is but a drifting phantasm of translucent flesh, its only visible feature the pulsing labyrinth of its mind, luminous against the dim glow of the void. To those who behold them, they seem as specters of forgotten ages, their thoughts weaving across their bodies in an intricate dance of electric pulses. Unlike others, they have never sought conquest, never hungered for dominion beyond the handful of worlds upon which they drift like phantoms of the deep past. But when humanity came to them, offering not war, but alliance, not subjugation, but stewardship, they did not hesitate. For in humankind's hunger, in their ruthless will to protect and expand, they saw something they themselves had long abandoned, the will to shape the cosmos rather than simply endure it. And so they welcomed them, these upstart conquerors, not as masters, nor as equals, but as guardians, an unyielding shield against those who would have otherwise consumed them. It is upon these many races that the empire stands, and it is within the uncounted multitudes of its peoples that its strength is found. Goldilocks worlds, those rare havens of temperate life, have long since become shared domains, their lands partitioned among species who, in ages past, might have been locked in the savage wars of natural selection. But it is within the space stations, the great waystations of the void, that the empire's true form is revealed. An endless procession of entities, each stranger than the last, bound together by the ever-churning tide of civilization. And yet, even now, they are changing. With each passing age, the forces of artificial evolution twist the races of the empire into new and greater forms. Flesh is no longer immutable. Genes are sculpted, enhanced, rewritten at will. Some grow stronger, faster, more resilient. Others are altered beyond recognition, reshaped for tasks the ancients could never have conceived. What they were, what they are, what they will become, these distinctions blur with each generation, lost in the ceaseless march toward a future where biology itself bends to the demands of empire. What, then, is humankind? What, then, is any race? When flesh can be reforged, when minds can be rewritten, when one's form is but another tool to be adjusted and perfected, what meaning remains in the boundaries that once defined them? The empire is not merely a dominion of races, but of shifting, ever-mutable entities, bound by purpose rather than form, by will rather than nature. And so they march ever forward, into an age where identity is but a memory, and life itself is but a canvas upon which the future is written. Beyond the veil of stars, the great galactic crusade. The empire does not slumber. It does not wane. It does not pause to reflect upon its conquests, nor does it tremble at the precipice of the unknown. It is a force, unrelenting and inexorable, pushing ever outward into the cosmic abyss, its reach extending beyond even the primordial chains of its own galaxy. And so, even as the last vestiges of resistance were swept from the spiral arms of our celestial home, the next frontier was already chosen, the next dominion marked for subjugation. The exodus began as a trickle, a mere handful of vessels vanishing beyond the cold rim of the Milky Way, their luminous trails swallowed by the infinite void. Then, the floodgates opened. Billions of ships, each a spear thrust into the heart of the unknown, now depart daily, vanishing into the unfathomable dark between galaxies. They seek new dominions, new worlds to shape, new races to weave into the ever-expanding fabric of imperial might. They seek not merely existence, but totality, the binding of all that is into a singular, indomitable will. And yet, amidst the void's immeasurable silence, a peculiar revelation emerges: there are none like us. No empire of equal ambition, no species that has risen to our stature. The fledgling civilizations encountered thus far are but shadows of potential, flickering embers waiting to be stoked or extinguished. Some, trembling at the sight of our vessels darkening their skies, kneel willingly, welcoming integration into the grand hierarchy of order. Others, less wise, resist, only to find themselves broken beneath the weight of our dominion, their defiance crushed beneath the inexorable march of progress. Each day, the chronicles of our conquests are broadcast across the vast networks of imperial communication, and each day, new names are added to the ever-growing register of the subjugated. And yet, the hunger remains. The empire will not cease until every void is bridged, until every star is counted, until the final mysteries of existence are unraveled beneath the weight of its intellect. It is not enough to merely conquer, to merely understand. No, the goal is far greater. The empire seeks not only to spread across space, but to shatter the very boundaries that define it. For even the infinite might have its limits, and when that limit is reached, we shall not falter. Even now, whispers arise among the scholars of the Institute and the architects of the great stellar engines. Whispers of something beyond space, beyond the dimensions we know. There are murmurs of realms unseen, of layers of existence folded within the fabric of reality like forgotten pages in a book too vast to comprehend. When the last galaxy has fallen, when the final equation of the universe has been solved, will that be the end? No. For what is an empire if it does not seek beyond its own understanding? What is the purpose of knowledge, if not to pry open the doors of existence itself? When the last star has been claimed, when every known law has been bent to our will, we shall not rest. We shall turn our gaze upon the fractures in reality, the hidden corridors of space-time, the whispers of realms beyond the reach of flesh and thought. And when we find them, oh, when we find them, we shall break through, as we always have. For the empire is not merely a nation. It is not merely an assembly of worlds. It is a force, a purpose, a tide that no wall, no law, no universe itself can hold back. And the day will come when even the cosmos will bow before it. The unending crucible, war in the empire. War is not an aberration, it is the empire's natural state. It is the great constant, the force that has sculpted history, the relentless tide that drives civilization ever forward. To expand is to conquer is to impose order, and to impose order is to wage war. Thus, the imperial war machine does not rest. It does not idle in times of peace, for peace is but a fleeting illusion, a mere breath between the clash of titanic wills. The engines of destruction hum ceaselessly, their purpose as immutable as the pull of gravity, their existence a silent testament to the inevitability of conflict. But war itself has changed. No longer is there need for flesh to meet flesh, for the savage press of infantry against enemy lines. The days of blood-stained soil and desperate charges into gunfire have long since faded into the annals of forgotten antiquity. Now, war is a thing of the heavens, a spectacle of cataclysmic scale, where entire worlds tremble beneath the shadow of imperial fleets. The presence of a single dreadnought looming over a city is often enough to end a conflict before it begins. The lightless hulls of these behemoths stretch across the sky, blotting out the stars, their weapons vast enough to shatter mountains, their gaze cold and indifferent as they pass judgment upon those who dare resist. Few battles require the presence of infantry, for bombardment is ever the preferred solution. Days, sometimes mere hours, of unrelenting firepower are usually sufficient to grind resistance to dust. And should defiance persist, then the stars themselves are called to pass sentence, their fury unchained in an unceasing rain of destruction, until nothing remains of the enemy but silent ruins and vaporized memories. Yet, for all its devastation, planetary war is but a footnote in the true conflicts of the empire. The great wars are waged in the abyss between the stars, where armadas clash in duels of unimaginable scale. These engagements do not last mere hours or days, they stretch into weeks, months, even years, as fleets maneuver across the vast emptiness, locked in battles where a single misstep, a single miscalculation, might spell annihilation. The weapons they wield are beyond comprehension. Stellar lances that can sunder moons, singularity cannons that tear apart the fabric of reality itself. It is no surprise that, in ages past, entire planets have been lost to these conflicts, reduced to nothing more than drifting debris due to a single errant shot. Yet within the heart of the empire itself, there has been silence. The great battles of the past are but echoes, for within the boundaries of the Milky Way, there has been no war of consequence for over 1,000 years. The only enemies that remain are the petty, the insignificant, the pirates who lurk in the forgotten corners of space, the dissidents who whisper of rebellion before being silenced by the Empire's ever-watchful hand. These are not true wars, but mere exercises, reminders to the people that the war machine still turns, that it will always turn. Still, there are those who object. Voices of dissent, scholars and idealists who call for an end to conflict, who dream of disarmament and diplomacy, of an age where power might be set aside in favor of unity. But history is a merciless teacher, and it speaks in the language of ruin. Every golden age of peace has been but a lull before the storm. Every attempt at disarmament has only invited new wars, more savage and more devastating than those before. The Empire knows this, and so it prepares. It builds. It advances. For war is not an evil to be eradicated. It is the fire that forges civilization itself. And if the Empire were to lay down its weapons, if it were to silence its great guns and let its fleets drift into dormancy, what then? Would peace reign eternal? Would the universe grant its mercy? No, for in the darkness beyond the known, there are always shadows waiting, forces unseen, waiting for the moment when the great shield of war is lowered. So the Empire stands ready, ever prepared, ever armed. For there is no peace that is not built upon the foundation of absolute power, and the day will come when war shall once again call upon the stars to burn, and the Empire will answer. The veiled thrones, politics of the Empire. Power in the Empire is a specter, shifting and unknowable, a presence that is felt yet never fully seen. Across the countless worlds that orbit their burning suns, among the guilds and ruling bodies that govern the daily affairs of the citizenry, elections are held, rulers rise and fall, and great plans are set into motion. The structure appears firm, a vast and complex tapestry of governance, where ambition is rewarded, and those with vision are granted dominion over their realms. Yet above it all, beyond the reach of the planetary courts and the bureaucratic halls of power, there exists something far greater, something unseen, something unknowable. Who, or what, truly rules the Empire? Some whisper of an intelligence beyond comprehension, an artificial mind, ancient and omnipotent, guiding the course of history with a cold and calculated will. This entity, some claim, is no mere machine, but something far more, an intelligence that has ascended beyond the boundaries of logic and flesh, entwined with the fabric of the Empire itself, its presence felt in every decision, every war, every conquest. Others speak of an emperor, immortal, eternal, a being who has conquered even death itself. Through arcane sciences, through the fusion of cybernetics and biotic enhancements, they say he has endured beyond the limits of flesh, his mind stretching across the vast expanse of the Empire, unchallenged, unbroken, guiding it with an unseen hand. A ruler not of mortal constraint, but of divine purpose, existing beyond the grasp of time, reigning in secret for untold millennia. And then, there are those who claim that there is no single ruler at all, that the true power lies in the shadows, with the Institute, that vast and secretive body of scholars and scientists, whose research dictates the ebb and flow of technology, of war, of expansion itself. Some believe that it is they who determine the fate of the Empire, wielding knowledge as their greatest weapon, altering reality itself from behind the curtain of obscurity. Yet, for all these theories, one truth remains indisputable: power belongs to those who command the void. It is the great armadas, the endless fleets of the colonial lords, that dictate the Empire's will. He who holds the ships, holds the Empire. The governors may rule their worlds, the guilds may plot and maneuver, the scholars may delve into the unknown, but when the dreadnoughts arrive in orbit, their will is absolute. It is the military ships that come to collect taxes, extracting tribute in the form of resources and energy, their looming presence a reminder of where true authority lies. It is the legions of recruits, those who flock to the banner of exploration and conquest, that ensure the Empire's ceaseless expansion. For them, service is not merely duty, it is ascension. To be chosen is to be granted land on newly discovered worlds, to carve one's name into the annals of history, to be immortalized upon the monoliths that stand upon every planet, their surface etched with the deeds of those who have shaped the Empire's fate. And yet, despite this vast and unfathomable hierarchy, despite the unknowable depths of governance, the Empire thrives. It thrives not through the will of a single ruler, nor through the dictates of an absolute authority, but through something far greater. It moves, it breathes, it expands like a living organism, each part working in unison, each organ sustaining the whole. It does not need a throne, for its structure is its will. It does not need a face, for its citizens are its voice. Perhaps that is why it has endured. Perhaps that is why, amidst the chaos of the void, the Empire alone stands eternal. The unwritten fate, what the future holds. The future is an abyss, vast and unknowable, a shifting tapestry woven from the unseen forces of time. No oracle, no machine, no scholar of the Institute can truly foretell what lies ahead. And yet, even amidst the cosmic uncertainty, one truth stands immutable: the Empire will endure. The Empire will expand. The Empire will consume. So long as there remain frontiers uncharted, worlds unseen, secrets untold, the great engines of progress will never falter. The ceaseless march of knowledge and conquest shall continue until every last shadow has been banished, until every law of existence has been unraveled, until every stone, every atom, every fragment of reality has been laid bare before the towering intellect of the Empire's might. And even then, there will be more. For what is knowledge but an invitation to deeper mysteries? What is discovery but the gateway to greater unknowns? Even should the boundaries of the cosmos be reached, even should the final star system be mapped and claimed, the Empire will not stagnate. New realms shall be sought, beyond the physical, beyond the dimensional, beyond the fabric of time itself. If the universe is finite, then new ones shall be forged. If space itself should bend to our will, then new planes of existence will be torn from the void. Not even the death of the universe, that great and final entropy, is enough to spell the end. The slow dimming of the stars, the inevitable unraveling of all things, these are but obstacles, challenges to be conquered as countless others before them. Where energy fails, it shall be created anew. Where galaxies cool and crumble into nothingness, they shall be rekindled by hands that have long since mastered the fabric of existence itself. Even the death of time shall be but a threshold, a door to be pried open and remade in the Empire's image. To falter is not in our nature. To perish is not within our design. The Empire does not wane. It is eternal, self-sustaining, an organism that refuses decay. We shall not fade into oblivion, as the civilizations of old. We shall not pass into the void, as forgotten empires before us. No, we shall illuminate the dark, until there is no dark left to illuminate. And so, the path ahead remains unwritten, a great and limitless expanse of possibility. But the direction is clear, as it has always been. Forward, ever forward, for the Empire will shine, forevermore. Expedition to Horus 1. The Log of Commander Zariush, Entry 1. By decree of the Empire's inexorable will, I, Commander Zariush, and the forces under my command, Armada 199 LH, have been tasked with the solemn duty of venturing into the uncharted void, to bring the cold and indifferent light of knowledge to the veiled dominion of Horus 1. It is not mere exploration we undertake, nor simple reconnaissance. We are the vanguard of civilization itself, sent forth to measure the worth of this system, to determine its secrets, to judge its fitness for the inevitable march of the Empire. Our orders are clear and absolute. We are to survey and classify the celestial bodies of this system, its suns, its worlds, its moons, determining their worth and resources and habitability. The Empire has deemed this region worthy of conquest, and thus conquest shall come, in one form or another. Yet there is another reason we have been dispatched, one unstated but understood. We are not the first to tread these blackened pathways. Another fleet, a lesser armada, was sent before us. Their silence lingers as a specter, an unspoken omen that weighs upon our mission. Something awaited them in the abyss, and now nothing remains of them but uncertainty. For this reason, we have been given full sanction to eradicate any entity that presents itself as a threat. No warnings, no second chances. The Empire does not tolerate impediments. Whatever dwells here, if anything still lingers, shall be met with swift and absolute annihilation. Composition of the fleet. Our fleet is modest but formidable, its design dictated by the demands of deep space incursion. 15 medium-class warships, each a testament to the Empire's mastery of destruction, their hulls plated with neutron-forged armor, their arsenals bristling with weapons capable of reducing entire continents to ash. Supporting them are 10 scout vessels, agile and keen-eyed, their sensors crafted to pierce through the veils of darkness and deception. It is with these that we shall first sweep the system, their instruments reaching forth into the void like grasping fingers, eager to unearth whatever lies hidden in the shadows. Preliminary data on Horus 1. What little we know of this system is gleaned from the distant, flickering readings of long-range sensors, pale reflections of truth, distorted by the vast gulfs of space. Horus 1 is bound to the throes of an A-class star, a titan of searing brilliance, its light cold and merciless, a predator among celestial bodies. Wrapped within its gravitational grasp are 2 gas giants, bloated monstrosities crowned with storms of unthinkable scale, their depths concealing chemical compositions that may prove valuable to the alchemists of the Empire. More intriguing, however, are the 3 terrestrial planets that lurk within the system's habitable zone. One, perhaps, holds the potential for life, or at the very least, conditions suitable for the creeping tendrils of colonization. There, if fortune favors us, we shall erect the Empire's beacon, the first mark of dominion upon this forsaken system, a silent declaration to the cosmos: this world belongs to us. The veil of uncertainty. Yet, for all the certainty with which we approach our mission, an unease festers in the minds of the crew. It is not the anticipation of battle, nor the weight of responsibility that afflicts them, but something deeper, something unspoken. The previous fleet did not merely vanish, it was consumed. And though no trace of their fate remains, there lingers an unmistakable truth that all who voyage into the unknown must reckon with. There are things that dwell in the dark, things that do not welcome the Empire's presence, things that have slumbered long before our kind first cast their gaze upon the stars. I do not fear war. I do not fear the enemy, but what I do fear is the silence, for it is never truly empty. We make our approach. The first scouts will deploy within the hour. If something watches, it shall see us soon. If something waits, it shall not wait much longer. By the will of the Empire, we move forward, and should we falter, may our names be etched upon the monoliths, so that those who come after us may remember. The descent into Horus 1. The arrival was uneventful, almost unsettlingly so. No phantom readings haunted our scanners, no aberrant signatures flickered in the void to suggest unseen watchers lurking beyond the veil. The system lay before us in serene silence, its celestial bodies bathed in the cold, spectral radiance of their A-class star. This light, harsh and unnatural, renders the planets in hues of silver and pallid gold, stripping them of warmth, of familiarity, of life. And yet, there are signs. Faint, but undeniable. One world, alone among its barren kin, bears the marks of potential. The delicate spectrographic signatures whisper of water, an element both simple and sacred, the harbinger of biological possibility. It is there we shall begin. If the Empire seed is to take root in this system, it must be in soil that can nourish it. If life has ever dared emerge here, we shall unearth its remnants and judge whether it is something to be cultivated, or something to be extinguished. The course of our survey. Our approach will be methodical. First, we descend upon the would-be habitable world, scouring its surface, its atmosphere, its depths. Its air will be tested for the breath of life, its waters tasted for the memory of movement. If it proves worthy, the beacon will be placed, our silent proclamation of dominion. Once this task is complete, we shall turn our gaze upon the system's other celestial bodies. The lifeless husks of planets shall be dissected and catalogued, their surfaces stripped of secrecy, their cores weighed for worth. The moons, 20 in number, their silent orbits a dance of eerie precision, shall be scanned for anomalies, for resources, for the echoes of anything that may have once been. And then, at last, the gas giants, titans crowned in swirling tempests, their gravity wells hungry and ceaseless, their depths hiding the alchemical treasures of the universe. It is within their dense atmospheres that rare elements may be found, that the Empire's great furnaces may find fuel to burn for 1,000 more years. These worlds are inhospitable to life as we know it, yet life has never been bound by the limitations of our comprehension. What else might lurk in their storms? Unseen, waiting, the unnerving absence. Despite the promising readings, a question remains unspoken among the officers and crew. A question that, though ignored, gnaws at the edges of every mind. Where's the silence coming from? Not the absence of noise, that is to be expected in the cold womb of the void, but rather, the deeper silence, the absence of the errant cosmic whispers that normally permeate space. No rogue signals, no fluctuations of unknown origin, no faint pulses of forgotten transmissions. It is not emptiness that unsettles, but an absence so profound that it feels unnatural. The system is quiet, too quiet. Perhaps it is simply an untouched place, a realm where no life has ever taken hold, no civilization has ever dared to tread. If so, we shall correct that mistake. Or perhaps, it is quiet because it was made to be. Either way, the work begins. The scouts are deploying, our approach is locked, and the surface of the world below awaits the touch of our steel. By the will of the Empire, we descend. The descent upon Hexonus. As per the sacred rites of imperial conquest, the privilege of naming a world falls to its first claimant. Thus, I name this place Hexonus, in accordance with the unshakable, almost maddening regularity that defines its every surface. It is unlike anything I have ever seen in my long years of service, nor does it resemble any world catalogued in the annals of the Empire. Even from orbit, the pattern was evident, though its full scale could only be appreciated once our vessels breached the poisoned atmosphere and set down upon its surface. The very bones of the world adhere to an impossible geometry. Every element, every formation, perfect hexagons. The planet does not merely contain hexagonal structures, it is made of them. The stone beneath our boots is an endless tessellation of six-sided formations. The dirt, when sifted through one's fingers, falls in minute hexagonal grains. Even the flora, if such a term can be used, follows this immutable pattern. The leaves, the bark, the very veins of the plants all adhere to this alien regularity, as though shaped by an unseen force, an unyielding hand that imposes structure upon all things. This is not natural. No world should be so precise, so mathematically perfect. Life, in its chaotic striving, does not yield to such exactitude. Even the vast mechanisms of the Empire, with all its terraforming might, have never sculpted a world with such deliberate, unbroken symmetry. Hexonus stands outside the bounds of randomness, outside evolution, an unwholesome air. Initial atmospheric readings confirm what was expected: the air is lethal. Laden with volatile compounds and unfamiliar toxins, it is utterly unsuited for unprotected human respiration. The Empire has, of course, turned worse places into thriving colonies, and no doubt the Institute will descend upon this planet in due time, drawn like frenzied scholars to its unsolvable mysteries. There will be study, experimentation, theories, and counter-theories, yet I doubt even their brilliance will uncover the root of this anomaly. For if life has taken hold in such a place, then it must follow that something older than mere plants once ruled here. The silence of the jungle. As of yet, no fauna has been observed, though I cannot bring myself to believe in their absence. The jungle, if such a term is appropriate, sprawls endlessly, great pillars of interwoven hexagonal bark stretching into the violet haze of the sky. The air is thick with a chemical scent that no filter can fully expunge, and though no sound reaches our ears, the feeling of being watched presses upon us with the weight of an unseen presence. Perhaps the jungle is empty. Perhaps nothing lives here beyond these trees and their impossibly ordered growth. And yet, I am unconvinced. Something lingers here, hidden beneath the surface, waiting beyond the veil of ordered foliage. Life abhors silence. A world such as this does not maintain itself. It is maintained. Orders and precautions. For now, we hold the position. Half the Armada remains in Hexonus orbit, conducting deep scans for any disturbances, hidden structures, or energy signatures that may suggest artificial influence. The other half has moved to the next terrestrial world, beginning its own analysis. If something is here, it has had eons to prepare. The question is, has it been waiting for us? Day 3. The unease of Hexonus. The midpoint of our planetary analysis has been reached, and yet, with every datum collected, with every anomaly uncovered, Hexonus yields nothing but greater uncertainty. Our scans have confirmed what initial readings only hinted at: gravitational distortions, inexplicable fluctuations in mass distribution, and the presence of biological irregularities beyond the known patterns of organic evolution. Scouts have been dispatched to these locations, their sensors finely tuned to detect the impossible, and yet, they return with nothing. No structures, no explanations, only an overwhelming absence, as if something has been here and left no trace, or worse, as if our instruments themselves are being deceived by the very fabric of this place. The landscape of Hexonus is divided, a world of rigid symmetry, split between land, 35%, and vast expanses of water and polar ice. And yet, it is not the land that commands our unease, nor even the forests of motionless, hexagonal trees that seem to hold their breath in our presence. It is the ocean. The abyss beckons. Beneath the blackened, lightless waves of Hexonus' cyclopean seas, the greatest anomalies stir. Our deep-sea scans reveal colossal life signals, entities of unfathomable size lurking beneath the abyssal depths. Their signatures defy known biology. Too vast, too old, too alien, a presence that should not be. Are they singular creatures, slumbering leviathans of a forgotten age? Or are they the remnants of something greater, something whose full form cannot be perceived by mortal minds? A research and discovery expedition, under my direct command, is now being prepared. We shall descend into the depths, into the sources of these monstrous anomalies. Whether what we find shall be a remnant of history or an echo of something yet living, only time will tell. Reports from Rock 551. Meanwhile, the second exploratory force continues its work on the other terrestrial world within the system, designated Rock 551, a name chosen out of sheer indifference. A mundane planet, one that offers little beyond its composition of silver and iron. No water, no signs of life, only dust, ice, and silence. These planets are the common stones of the Empire's dominion, lifeless worlds of mineral wealth to be strip-mined and discarded once their usefulness expires. And yet, the existence of such an unremarkable planet within the same system as Hexonus only amplifies our questions. Why? Why does Hexonus bear such rigid mathematical perfection? Why do even its smallest grains of sand, its droplets of water, its very dirt reflect the hexagonal pattern that governs its entire existence? Our instruments are limited aboard the fleet, but I would not be surprised to find that even its molecular structure follows this unyielding order. There is a pattern here, a purpose, and it is not one made by chance. The Lost Armada. As of yet, no trace has been found of the previous fleet that vanished within this sector. Their transmissions ceased without warning, their fates unknown. The silence of the system, that dreadful, unnatural silence, persists, unbroken, unwavering. No debris fields, no wreckage, no signs of battle, nor distress signals lingering in the void. It is as if they were swallowed whole. And now, we are here. The descent begins. The deep-sea vessels are prepped. The abyss calls, and we shall answer. The Empire demands understanding. If these colossal signals are indeed remnants of some great, slumbering life, we will wake them. Whether that is a triumph or a mistake, time alone will reveal. Day 4. The Abyssal Descent. Accompanied by 40 of my finest crew and 2 deep-sea exploration vessels, we plunged into the abyss, descending toward the most intense anomaly recorded within these waters. What we found defied reason, defied logic, defied all that we have come to understand about life and its formation. It began as a slow, silent dive, the pressure outside our hulls rising with every meter, the dim light of Hexonus' pale star fading into eternal blackness. Our vessel lights illuminated the water in eerie shafts, cutting through a gloom that seemed almost sentient, as if the sea itself watched, waiting. Then, it appeared, a serpent of impossible scale, a beast whose sheer enormity dwarfed our craft. 3 Titan-class warships could be devoured in a single bite, and still, it would hunger. Its form was no mere biological aberration. It was a manifestation of the planet's grotesque, perfect order. Its very scales, its eyes, every ridge and facet of its being adhered to the sacred, omnipresent hexagonal design that governed all things on Hexonus. And yet, for all its horror, for all its mind-shattering vastness, it regarded us as nothing. Indifference. That is what chilled me more than its size, more than the knowledge that our weapons would have been as insects against a leviathan. It did not see us. It did not care. It drifted, impossibly ancient, fulfilling some unknowable purpose within the hidden depths of this cursed sea. We captured a full 3-dimensional scan of the creature, an artifact that will be transmitted immediately to the annals of the Empire, though I doubt any hollow projection could capture the sheer, mind-breaking presence of the thing. And then, we went deeper. A world of hexagonal madness. The creatures of this abyss were not of this universe, or at least not of any natural evolution that should be. Shark-like monstrosities, their heads grotesquely enlarged, their bodies unnaturally elongated, slithered rather than swam, bending and twisting in ways that defied any known biomechanics. Schools of fish, shaped as perfect hexagons, drifted in eerie synchrony, their faceted hexagonal eyes unblinking, lifeless, as though they themselves were mere pieces of something greater. Crabs, jellyfish, coral formations, all adhering to the same immutable pattern, as though the very blueprint of existence here had been rewritten. And yet, despite the grotesquerie, despite the violation of all natural order, none of it prepared us for what awaited at the depths of the anomaly, the monolith beneath the waves. It loomed in the dark, a structure of impossible scale, its form only revealed as our sonar pings sketched its shape in trembling pulses. A colossal statue, 75 meters in height, twice as long. A seated figure, a thing of nightmare, of primal terror, a humanoid form with the head of an octopus, its tentacles draping down to its abdomen, its form weathered by time, yet undeniably intact. It was the only thing we had seen that did not fully adhere to the planet's hexagonal law, a revelation that chilled me to my core. Only its eyes, 2 vast hexagonal gemstones, remained true to the pattern that ruled this world. Why? The temple around it, yes, a temple, that much was clear, stretched into the darkness, its entrance carved into the abyssal stone at the statue's base. Our 3D sonar mapped towering pillars within, stretching beyond our scans, corridors leading deeper still, and something inside, something that did not register as simple empty space, something that should not be there. I felt it before I even spoke. A pressure, a presence. The abyss itself seemed to breathe, as though we were no longer the watchers but the watched. I have felt war, I have faced death, and yet, never before have I felt this. This was not fear. This was recognition. A part of me, the rational commander, wished to continue. The Empire demands knowledge, and knowledge demands sacrifice. But another part, the part that has seen void battles that should never be spoken of, the part that has witnessed ships vanish from existence with no trace, knew better. We ascended. We fled. Reflections on the surface. As we breached the waters and returned to our ship, I turned back one last time to the black abyss below. The statue, the temple, the impossible order of this planet, they are not natural. They are not random. This world was not made. It was designed. And the architect, or its creations, may yet remain. We must analyze our data. We must understand. But above all, I must decide whether to report all of what we have seen. Because something tells me that some knowledge is best left unknown. Day 6. The finalization of planetary analysis. The relentless hum of our scanners filled the sterile silence of the command deck, their signals now returning with a full analysis of Hexonus. The data streams came in waves, dense and intricate, each bit more disturbing than the last. We have identified dozens more anomalous locations scattered across the surface, most of them submerged beneath the waves, yet one inland region has drawn our immediate interest. Its signature, strange, warped, almost unnatural, is unlike anything we have encountered so far on this forsaken planet. A small exploration squad will be dispatched in the coming days to investigate, though I confess to a growing sense of dread that I cannot shake. What we have seen already, what is still hidden beneath the surface, it defies understanding. All of the data we have painstakingly collected has been transmitted to the Empire, and now we wait for the verdict of those who dwell in the light of higher powers, the Institute, the Lords of the Armada. They will surely be intrigued, as will the scholars from every corner of the galaxy. I can already feel their eyes turning toward Hexonus, like vultures circling an unknown carcass, eager to feast on whatever knowledge it hides. The question remains, what price will be paid for this knowledge? While the remainder of the fleet continues its survey of the system, I and a few others remain in orbit above Hexonus. I cannot bring myself to leave just yet. Something about the planet gnaws at me, a sense of being watched, though I know that's nothing but paranoia born from the horrors below. However, not all is well aboard the ship. Genetic anomaly. A few members of the underwater expedition, those who ventured too deep into the anomaly zones, have begun to exhibit strange genetic mutations. The skin on their hands and necks has shifted, transformed, taking on a hexagonal pattern, as though the very fabric of their bodies has begun to mirror the geometrical law that dominates the planet. We have isolated them for now, closely monitoring their vitals. The transformation, though unsettling, does not appear to be spreading further in their bodies. It seems confined to the surface of the skin, so far. There is no evidence that it is contagious, but given the mystery of this place, I can't shake the suspicion that this is only the beginning of something far darker. Blood analysis has not revealed any immediate abnormalities, though certain cells do exhibit a strange hexagonal structure, which, by all that is sane, should not be possible. The official explanation is that the anomaly zone exerts an unseen influence on organic life forms, altering their biology on a molecular level. While this theory is plausible, I cannot help but wonder if there is something more to this planet's unnatural order than we realize. Could these changes be an attempt to adapt? Could Hexonus itself be trying to integrate us into its geometric will? We are proceeding cautiously. I have ordered those affected to remain in isolation until we can confirm with certainty that their condition is stable. Future expeditions. We now face a dilemma. The inland anomaly site calls to us, its unknown presence a siren song that compels further exploration. But the genetic effects on our crew weigh heavily on my mind. These disturbances, though not immediately dangerous, may signal a future threat. And yet, the allure of discovery is too great. The Empire demands answers. We must venture deeper, for if we are to truly understand Hexonus, if we are to unravel the enigma of its hexagonal existence, we must push further, into the very heart of the mystery. But at what cost? We await the next orders from the Empire, though I fear they may come too late. Something tells me that the true horror of this world may already be reaching out, already intertwining itself with us. For now, we hold our position in orbit and prepare for what comes next. But I find myself asking, will we ever leave this place unchanged? Day 8. Orders from above. The hum of the communication system reverberated through the command deck as the awaited orders from the Empire came through. The silence that followed was thick with an unspoken tension, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on all of us. The decision had been made. The Empire has evaluated the situation, and despite the anomalies, despite the unsettling discoveries, we are to press forward. We will continue our exploration, seeking out the reasons behind the hexagonal mysteries of this world. The Empire's response was brief, cryptic, but decisive. They have acknowledged similar cases of bizarre planetary anomalies in the distant reaches of the galaxy, but little useful information has been provided to us. What knowledge there is fragmentary at best, and yet they demand action, action with haste, as always. Tomorrow, a small group of volunteers will venture into the jungles, to the area marked by our scans as the location of the inland anomaly. Their task is clear, a complete analysis of the region. From the data we've gathered from orbit, it seems eerily familiar, almost identical to the underwater temple we discovered days ago. The shape, the dimensions, the arrangement of the structure, all align too perfectly to be a coincidence. I cannot deny the creeping sense of foreboding that haunts me as I think of those volunteers. They will be tasked with entering the heart of the jungle, where the temple lies in waiting. Their mission is simple, or so it seems, to collect data and gather samples. but we both know that what they encounter there may not be simple at all. The soldiers are seasoned, trained for every eventuality, but no amount of training prepares one for the alien nature of this world. The mysteries surrounding the underwater temple remain unsolved, and yet, here we stand on the precipice of uncovering more. Will the inland temple reveal its secrets, or will it prove to be yet another impossible puzzle? Tomorrow will be pivotal. We are on the brink of a discovery that may shift our understanding of the galaxy itself. But I find myself asking, what will the Empire find in the data we collect? What dark forces might we awaken, unknowingly, in the pursuit of knowledge? The hexagonal law that governs this place may be no accident, and perhaps we are not the first to trespass here. As I prepare for the expedition tomorrow, I cannot shake the sense that Hexonus itself is watching us, its geometrical order patiently waiting for us to unravel its depths. Or, perhaps, it is already too late. Day 9. Exploration of the Ancient Temple. I remained aboard the mothership today, monitoring the progress of the expedition, listening to the crackle of calms as the soldiers ventured into the heart of the ancient temple. My fingers hovered over the console, watching the vital signals of the crew members, ready to dispatch the rescue team should anything go awry. In this place, nothing can be taken for granted. Yet, for now, all was calm. Too calm. The exploration mission unfolded without incident. The soldiers returned, their bodies worn from the trek but alive, and more importantly, with samples that may provide insight into the riddle of this strange, alien world. The 3D models they had transmitted back revealed a breathtaking sight, a magnificent architectural marvel, the likes of which I had never seen before. The temple was divided into 3 sections. At its core, a vast empty expanse led to an altar, behind which stood a smaller statue of the creature we had encountered outside the temple, a hexagonal monstrosity, now enshrined in stone. The central space was flanked by colossal columns, each carved with intricate engravings that almost seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. The sides of the temple were dominated by an arrangement of thick, sharp spikes, their purpose uncertain but ominous. Beneath them, deep drains seemed to lead into the very bones of the structure. As the soldiers combed through the temple, the walls revealed their secrets, hieroglyphs, now subjected to the analytical power of our AI systems. The images they conveyed were startling, almost prophetic, the figures of titanic, celestial creatures descending from the sky, their forms half aquatic, interacting with the beings who worshipped and sacrificed to them. The monolithic structures, the very heart of the temple, seemed to bear witness to ancient rituals that were far beyond our comprehension. The architecture itself was a marvel. The columns, though massive, were adorned with geometrical patterns that echoed the hexagonal nature of the world itself. The ceiling arches formed a delicate latticework between the columns, themselves decorated in endless variations of intricate designs. It was as if the entire structure had been conceived with an almost unearthly precision, each shape, each curve meticulously aligned with a cosmic order. But as magnificent as it was, there was a dark undercurrent that could not be ignored. The soldiers who had ventured inside were afflicted by the same hexagonal anomaly that had affected the underwater expedition. But this time, it was far worse. Their eyes, once human, had turned to black hexagons, and their very cells, visible beneath their skin, had reformed into hexagonal patterns. It was as if the temple itself had begun to alter them, as if the ancient energies embedded in the walls had taken root in their very flesh. They are under deep investigation now, and while they show no signs of physical distress or irrational behavior, the change is undeniable. Psychologically, they remain coherent, rational, and still human. But how long will that last? What is the true extent of this anomaly? I cannot help but feel that we are standing on the edge of something far darker, far older, than any of us had prepared for. The temple's message is clear. There are forces here, far beyond our understanding, forces that may alter the course of our existence. I am filled with a growing sense of foreboding, knowing that the next steps may lead us deeper into this unfathomable mystery. The soldiers, despite their transformation, have not lost their courage, and perhaps that is the most unsettling part of all, for in the end, we may never truly know what we have unleashed. Day 10. The Eye of the Colossus. The data we have gathered over the last several days has drawn a chilling conclusion. The source of the anomaly, the very force behind the strange transformations and bizarre hexagonal patterns, appears to be connected to the ruby eyes of the statues, the titanic creature statues found within the temple. The eyes are not mere ornaments, they seem to possess an unnatural, almost sentient power. It is this force, perhaps some kind of ancient energy, that has been responsible for the affliction and alterations we have observed in both our crew and the strange life forms of this planet. The implications are staggering. If the eyes are indeed the heart of the anomaly, we must secure one, study its influence, and understand its reach, before it affects us further. In the face of this realization, we have been given new orders. A mission, simple on its surface but fraught with danger, has been devised. We are to retrieve one of the ruby eyes from the statue outside the temple, transport it back to the Empire, and begin a full investigation into its effects. The Empire will be eager to understand its nature, and our findings will surely form the cornerstone of many future expeditions. To carry out this task, we will utilize the very soldiers who have already been affected by the anomaly. Their affliction, strange and unsettling as it may be, has proven invaluable to our research. They are already partially aligned with the forces at play here, and thus they are the perfect candidates to approach the ruby eyes and collect them without further suffering. The plan is straightforward in theory, but I can't help but feel the weight of what we're attempting. We will send these afflicted soldiers, along with a small interstellar transport ship and several worker ships, to the temple once again. There, they will be tasked with carefully removing one of the ruby eyes from its colossal statue. But before they even attempt this delicate operation, they will need to conduct an experiment of sorts. We have provided the soldiers with specially prepared organic rations, which, when exposed to the strange energy of the ruby eyes, will begin to change. The goal is to pinpoint the range at which this transformation begins, the exact distance at which the hexagonal anomaly starts to affect organic material. They will stand still in one spot for 5 minutes, and then move an inch closer, observing when the transformation begins to occur. From this, we hope to chart the radius of the anomaly's influence. Once we have established the parameters, the soldiers are to immediately extract one of the ruby eyes and retreat from the temple. They will not return with the rest of the crew. They will be transported separately, in a secured ship specifically outfitted to carry the ruby eye without allowing its influence to spread. The rest of the crew will remain on the planet, ensuring that nothing else of value or interest is left behind. We cannot afford to waste time. Once the eye is secured, we will begin our journey back to the Empire. Even as I write this, I feel the weight of the decision pressing on me. The mission is necessary, but I cannot shake the feeling that we are stepping closer to something we are not yet prepared to understand. The Colossus eyes are not just relics, they are the gateways to an unknown power, and we are about to drag this power into our world. I can only hope that we are not making a grave mistake. Day 11. End of the mission. The hexagonal anomaly's reach was precisely measured. We found that at a distance of 2 kilometers from the ruby eye, the transformation began almost instantly. The soldiers were quick and efficient, securing the gem with commendable precision. But as the gem was removed from its resting place within the statue, something entirely unforeseen occurred. The ground beneath us began to tremble, the vibrations intensifying by the second. Then came the roars, deep, guttural, and loud enough to be felt in our bones. At first, I thought the vibrations were simply the result of the temple's collapse, but soon it became clear that something much more dangerous was unfolding beneath us. Within moments, the temple itself began to crumble, and from the rubble emerged a colossal creature, a horrific titan unlike anything we had seen before. This creature was an amalgamation of familiar elements, a serpent-like head, identical to the one we had encountered underwater, but its body was twisted, humanoid, and deformed. A slimy mass of red flesh, rippling and undulating with grotesque power, it reared up from the earth, its sheer presence overwhelming. The soldiers, still struggling to secure the enormous gem, were caught off guard. We had to act swiftly. I immediately gave the command to retreat. The soldiers scrambled to escape, but the creature was not about to let us leave so easily. In a display of unimaginable strength, it began hurling chunks of the crumbled temple at our ships. The velocity with which these massive stones flew through the air was staggering, each one capable of ripping apart our vessels with ease. Even the smallest fragment, if it struck, would likely tear through our hulls and send us crashing to the planet's surface. We barely managed to avoid the barrage, weaving and dodging between the falling debris. Luck was on our side, and after a tense few minutes, the ship made it to safety. But the troubles did not end there. The creature, now fully aware of our presence, turned its fury on our ships in orbit. It saw us as a threat, perhaps as the intruders who had dared disturb its sacred resting place. The serpent titan began launching entire chunks of the destroyed temple at us from below, with terrifying force. We attempted to suppress it with all available firepower, but it was futile. Our bombardments did nothing to halt the creature's rampage. Its thick, monstrous hide seemed impervious to the blasts, and it continued its assault without pause. As soon as the ruby eye was safely secured in our space-bound container, I ordered an immediate retreat from the planet. We got as far away from the surface as possible, and only then did we allow ourselves to breathe easy. The creature remained below, raging and howling at the heavens, but we had successfully escaped its wrath. Now, as we travel back to the Empire, I find myself reflecting on the mission as a whole. Everything we encountered on Hexonus, the anomalies, the creatures, the ancient temples, and the ruby eyes, has been a revelation. It has opened our eyes to a new realm of possibilities. Yet it has also shown us just how much we still do not understand. The Empire will no doubt be fascinated by these findings. I can already imagine the Institute poring over the data and the ruby eyes, eager to unlock the mysteries of this ancient power. As for us, we have achieved our goal. The Empire will take one more step toward its dominance of the stars, one more small step for knowledge and exploration. Perhaps, in time, we will learn to harness the power we have unearthed, and use it to further the Empire's greatness. But for now, we have made it out alive, and that is a victory in itself. The future of the Empire is bright, and our mission is a small, but significant, part of its expansion. As we make our way back home, I can only hope that the seeds of knowledge we've gathered will one day grow into something truly transformative for the Empire. Space Nomads. The Space Nomads, a history beyond time. No race, no civilization, no empire has ever truly understood the space nomads. They exist as drifting phantoms, their origins lost in the dust of forgotten wars and vanished starfaring cultures. Some whisper that they are the remnants of those who fled the Third Great Space War, their shattered fleets coalescing into something both greater and more dreadful than what came before. Others, more fearful, claim they have always been, lingering in the void long before the first sentient mind awoke to gaze upon the stars. They arrive unbidden, their vast and rusted vessels appearing from the dark like the ghosts of dead worlds. They depart just as swiftly, leaving behind only the echo of their presence and the uneasy memories of those who dared to trade with them. The only true accounts we possess are transactional records from the fringes of civilization, ancient space stations at the edge of forgotten galaxies, places where the laws of the great powers hold little sway. Here, the space nomads barter in artifacts of strange and unknowable origin, technology that defies known physics, and substances that shimmer with an eerie light. What they seek in return is inconsistent, as if their needs shift with the tide of cosmic forces unseen by human eyes. Most disturbingly, their home, their ark, their world, their prison, defies all known logic. A Titan-class battleship, colossal beyond measure, drifts through the void, a thing of ancient and unfathomable purpose. No records exist of its manufacture. No known empire claims its design. It is neither of the present nor of the remembered past. It is old, so impossibly old that its metal hull is corroded by the touch of eons, its once glistening structure now stained by the slow decay of eternity. Fluids seep from within, oozing like blood from wounds long since scabbed over, and yet it moves, bending space itself to its will, vanishing into the nothingness between galaxies. Speculation runs rampant about what lies within. Conservative estimates suggest it houses 1 billion souls. More audacious theories posit twice that number, if not more. And yet, no eyes have ever glimpsed its interior. None have been seen to leave, and none have been seen to enter. Communications, when they come, bring only cryptic images, faint and distorted, showing creatures unlike any race known to science. One such transmission depicted a being of unnatural proportions, its emaciated frame elongated beyond reason, limbs unnervingly thin and curved, its round head featureless save for the shadowed pits where eyes might have been. The prevailing belief among xenobiologists is that these grotesqueries are the consequence of generations spent in null gravity. It is a documented phenomenon. The body mutates when severed from the embrace of planetary force, the human form warping as if sculpted by the void itself. Given time, the change becomes irreversible. Children born in such conditions do not grow as we do. Their bones stretch, their muscles atrophy, and their very biology alters to survive an existence we were never meant to endure. To step upon a planet after such an upbringing would be unthinkable, their fragile forms crushed beneath the weight of natural gravity. Some, through augmentation, find a way to interact with grounded civilization, but most remain forever bound to the cold abyss, their minds and bodies shaped by the nothingness between the stars. So the space nomads endure, forever adrift in the unfathomable vastness, bound to a vessel whose origins remain as unknowable as its fate. Are they merely lost children of war? Or something far worse? Are they the harbingers of something ancient, something beyond human understanding? The questions remain unanswered, and perhaps, for the sake of all who dwell in the light of stars, they are best left that way. The search for the space nomads. Many explorers and scholars have attempted to track the space nomads, yet despite the unfathomable size of their vessel, no pursuit has yielded success. At one time, Empire officials issued a decree to locate them, their primary demand being the collection of taxes that the nomads had ignored for decades. A galaxy-wide search was launched, and while reports suggest some measure of contact was made, the details remain enshrouded in secrecy. Some whisper that the Empire struck an undisclosed deal with the nomads. Others claim the vessel was never found at all. A third, more disturbing theory suggests that what Imperial forces witnessed aboard the ship led them to abandon their pursuit entirely, declaring the nomads to be of no consequence, though their hushed tones betrayed a deeper, unspoken terror. Yet rumors persist. Some paint the nomads as a people truly free, unshackled by the laws of empires, living in an existence of boundless liberty. Others, however, tell darker tales, of eerie abductions, of ships found drifting through the void, their crews vanished without a trace. Whispers of an esoteric and malevolent faith growing aboard the ancient vessel speak of rituals in the dark, obeisance to unseen entities whose hunger knows no end. Over the past decade, numerous accounts have surfaced of derelict vessels discovered in the wake of nomad sightings. These were not the work of pirates. Valuable cargo remained untouched. No ransom demands were ever issued. It was as if the crews had simply ceased to exist, leaving only the cold shell of their ships behind. Certain factions have now placed a formidable bounty on the space nomads, demanding the truth be uncovered. Are they criminals, violating the unspoken laws of galactic order? Or are they something far worse, something beyond law, beyond reason? Bounty hunters who have dared to pursue them have met grim fates. Wreckage drifts silently in the void, their shattered vessels a warning to those who would follow. The great silence of space swallows all, and the void remains indifferent to the fates of those who challenge it. The space nomads continue their endless journey, unseen, unknowable, and perhaps in the grand scheme of the cosmos, untouchable. Unsettling truths of the void. There are many peculiar and disquieting aspects of the space nomads, elements that gnaw at the rational mind and suggest truths too vast or too harrowing to fully comprehend. Of particular note is their transaction report, an enigma wrapped in the trappings of normal commerce, yet brimming with inconsistencies that defy conventional logic. They deal almost exclusively in vast quantities of biomass, the nature of which is shrouded in obfuscation. To the untrained observer, these might appear as medicine or advanced bioengineering modules, but such an assessment fails to account for the grotesque regularity of their trade. Ordinarily, vessels of such magnitude capable of sustaining an entire civilization would be burdened with an extensive and ever-changing manifest of logistical requirements: fuel, structural components, repair materials, life support systems, and myriad other consumables necessary for the maintenance of such a precarious existence. Yet, in all the recorded trade data across centuries and systems, their inventory remains eerily static. It does not fluctuate as it should, does not bend to the natural attrition that would plague even the most well-maintained fleets. How then do they sustain themselves? These ships were never designed to harbor billions for even a single generation, and yet they persist, untethered from any world, stretching across the epochs like drifting specters of a forgotten age. The matter of repair materials alone raises troubling questions. For vessels of such size and complexity, one would expect an unceasing demand for metals, electronics, and other critical components. Yet the quantities they acquire are meager, far below the threshold of sustainability. Do they possess some unfathomable method of self-repair, beyond the limits of our understanding? Do they siphon what they need from unseen sources, perhaps scavenging the forgotten bones of long-dead civilizations? Or is there a more insidious truth lurking beneath their silence? I have attempted, in the solitude of my research, to formulate plausible explanations, yet each possibility only spirals further into the abyss of speculation. One hypothesis suggests the existence of a hidden world, a sanctuary known only to them, where they retreat to rebuild and replenish away from prying eyes. But such a place would need to be vast beyond reckoning, a secret shielded by powers both ancient and terrible. Another theory, more disconcerting, paints them not as self-sustaining, but as predators of the void, harvesting the resources they need through means far darker than trade. There are whispers in the most obscure recesses of historical record, fragmented accounts of ghost ships and entire colonies vanishing overnight, their distress signals cut short, their fates swallowed by silence. Could it be that the nomads do not merely wander, but hunt? That their sustenance is drawn not from honest commerce, but from the plundering of lesser civilizations, devouring the flesh and steel of those who drift too close? Yet there remains one final, more terrifying conjecture, one that I dare not dwell upon for long, lest it consume my reason entirely. What if the space nomads are not merely travelers upon some endless pilgrimage, but prisoners of their own device? What if their exodus is not one of choice, but of necessity? If the very nature of their existence has been subsumed by a force they cannot escape, something beyond the grasp of mere mortals? Could it be that they are bound upon some infernal cycle, a doomsday clock of their own making, spiraling ever further into the abyss? There are ancient texts, faint, dust-laden relics of civilizations long erased, that speak in hushed and cryptic terms of a vessel that resembles theirs, a great wandering leviathan that has haunted the corridors of time for millennia. If these accounts are to be believed, then the space nomads are not merely a modern anomaly, but a legend stretching back to an age beyond history. That would make their existence not merely strange, but horrifying. A thing of myth, an entity that does not belong in any rational cosmos, something that has always been, and perhaps always will be. There are too many mysteries, too many gaps. I fear the answers lie in places we were never meant to tread, hidden in the cold and unfeeling reaches of the void. And I fear that if we press too hard, if we dare to gaze too deeply into that darkness, it may gaze back, and we may not like what we find. Bounty Hunter John. From all the data collected, one person who came closest to a true encounter with the space nomads was none other than Bounty Hunter John. It began when he was lured by the promise of wealth, a temptation that drew him into the wild void, uncharted sectors teeming with pirate havens and forsaken worlds. John was no stranger to danger, but even he underestimated the depths of what he would find. Through whispered legends and cryptic star maps, he pieced together a possible route of the nomads. One fragment of information led to another, and soon, to his growing astonishment, he discovered what could only be described as the ship's resting place. His ship, a sleek and nimble craft built for speed and precision, allowed him to slip unnoticed into a seemingly abandoned hangar. The entry was effortless, the colossal doors remained sealed, untouched for who knows how long. But his scanners told a different story. This place was not dead. It was teeming with life. John attempted communication, switching between frequencies, hoping to intercept some kind of response. Silence. Absolute, unnerving silence. And yet, the ship seemed to sense him. Viewing decks slid open, sensors rotated, tracking his every movement with uncanny precision. A deep unease settled over him, but he pressed forward, determined to catch even the faintest glimpse of what lay within. He drifted toward one of the vast observation windows, his heart pounding with an anticipation laced with dread. And then, he saw them. Not faces, not figures, eyes. Hundreds, thousands. They pressed against the glass, dark pools of unfathomable depth, layered in infinite reflection. No expressions, no emotions, just countless orbs staring, absorbing, devouring his presence with an intensity beyond comprehension. They filled the entire viewport, dimming the light with their sheer numbers. The sight struck him with a paralyzing horror. He could not, would not, understand what he was seeing. Tearing himself away, he maneuvered his craft further along the ship's exterior, but every window was the same. A flood of silent watchers, their unblinking gaze piercing into his soul. It was not just the terror of being observed, it was the feeling of being known, laid bare before something ancient, something that existed beyond the frail grasp of human reason. John knew he had seen enough. He retreated, the cold grip of fear clawing at his spine, but he had a plan. He would report his findings, sell the coordinates to those more equipped for battle. He returned to the station, securing his wealth, his survival. Yet, there was one troubling detail he could not shake. The people he had given the location to had not returned. Future of the nomads. The whispers of their existence have grown louder, the allure of their mystery ever more intoxicating to those who dare to dream beyond the stars. The legends surrounding the space nomads spread like eldritch fire, creeping into the corridors of power, infecting the minds of those who hold dominion over wealth and dominion over knowledge. There is something in the void, something that beckons, that lures the insatiable curiosity of humankind toward an abyss from which there may be no return. The private sector has turned its gaze upon them, financiers and explorers alike salivating at the prospect of unraveling the enigma, of unlocking what no mind has yet grasped. They speak of secrets waiting to be plundered, of technologies beyond reckoning, of truths that will shatter the feeble boundaries of our understanding. They do not realize, perhaps they refuse to realize, that some doors were never meant to be opened, some mysteries never meant to be solved. There are forces older than the light of our stars, entities that drift unseen through the fabric of space, and to disturb them is to invite a fate beyond words. Perhaps, one day, the persistence of mortal ambition will pierce the veil and lay bare the truths of the space nomads. Perhaps, through greed or folly, some daring souls will finally glimpse what lies at the heart of their endless wandering. But I cannot help but wonder, when that day comes, will it be revelation? Or ruin? Will those who seek answers find enlightenment, or will they find only madness, lost forever in the silent, staring void? Galactic Void Amoebas. Invasion of the Galaxy. In the year 7132, an unimaginable calamity befell the known galaxies. It was not war, nor rebellion, nor any cosmic upheaval dictated by the immutable laws of nature. It was something far worse. An invasion of creatures that defied all sense and reason, horrors that moved through the void with an ease that mocked the very foundations of natural law. These entities, neither wholly organic nor wholly ethereal, seemed woven from the fabric of the abyss itself. Their emergence was an anomaly that shattered the minds of scholars and strategists alike, for how could life, true sentient life, exist in the frozen vacuum of the void, bereft of nourishment, oxygen, or the elemental bonds that sustain all known beings? They were dubbed amoeba, a term pathetically inadequate to encapsulate the grotesque majesty of their form. Squamous and shifting, their vast, tentacled appendages coiled and undulated with eerie, rhythmic purpose, writhing hungrily in the darkness between stars. They did not simply consume, they enveloped, absorbed, and divided, a ceaseless, undulating hunger that transcended the crude limits of digestion. They ingested matter itself, stone, metal, and flesh, indiscriminately. The very sinews of their existence seemed to ripple with a hunger older than time, as though their very nature was one of insatiable devouring, a cosmic force with neither thought nor mercy. At first, they were dismissed as a curiosity, a strange pestilence to be studied, an anomaly that could be harnessed or eradicated. The arrogance of the Empire was boundless, its faith in its own dominion unwavering. And yet, as the amoeba spread from the uncharted fringes of the Inertus galaxy, their terrible truth was revealed. They did not conquer as men or machines did, they swarmed, an endless tide of silent, mindless hunger that rolled over planets and fleets alike. Armada after armada fell, ships once thought indomitable reduced to hollow husks drifting in the void. No energy weapon could hinder them. No shield could repel them. They moved through the hulls of dreadnoughts like mist through an open field, their gelatinous, shifting bodies impervious to the desperate, futile defenses of the Empire's greatest war machines. They came in numbers beyond comprehension, swarming their prey with no regard for those that perished in the onslaught. Like a tide of flesh and void, they flooded through corridors, breached command centers, and unraveled the very essence of civilization with each new infestation. The great behemoth vessels of the Empire, once symbols of absolute power, were reduced to drifting wrecks within minutes if even a single amoeba found its way inside. The small and nimble might flee, but the great and mighty had nowhere to run. And what, then, were they? From whence did they come? What cosmic hunger had birthed them from the cold abyss? No message came from them, no reason, no purpose beyond the unyielding impulse to devour and propagate. The minds of the Empire's scholars shattered upon the impossibility of their existence, their sanity consumed as readily as the great warships that once ruled the heavens. The question was no longer whether they could be stopped, but whether anything could endure in their wake. For what hope could there be against a hunger without end, an existence without reason, a force that neither fears nor relents? The amoeba did not seek dominion, they sought only to feed. And in their endless, writhing masses, in the madness of their ceaseless swarming, the Empire glimpsed a horror beyond reckoning. Not conquest, not war, but the end of all things. Accounts of Survivor Sergeant Locus. These fiendish abominations, grotesque in their enormity, ranged from 15 to 30 meters in length, their coiling limbs stretching like the writhing tendrils of some abyssal horror. Their slick, dark blue flesh was adorned with malevolent patterns, their surfaces riddled with bioluminescent dots that pulsed like the heartbeat of some eldritch intelligence. Some bore 8 limbs, others 18, their limbs ceaselessly shifting, curling, grasping at the emptiness around them. They had no strategy, no doctrine beyond the unholy imperative of their gluttony. They swarmed, and they consumed. That was all. I was among the first armadas to engage them, stationed in the outskirts of Inertus. We were 50 ships strong, 3 of them Titan-class, fortresses of war that had never known fear. And yet, we were unprepared for what awaited us. The moment we entered the system, we saw them. A seething mass of uncountable multitudes, a living wall of flesh that darkened the void. There were millions, moving as one, a tide of writhing bodies with no beginning and no end. And when they turned their eyeless hunger upon us, we knew our doom had arrived. We fired everything. Lasers, plasma bolts, fusion lances, every shot struck true, rending their flesh and casting grotesque sprays of viscous, blue ichor into the void. But it did nothing. They did not falter. They did not retreat. They came on, relentless and insatiable, their monstrous forms pressing through the carnage without hesitation. And then they reached us. Our shields might as well have been illusions. They passed through them as though they were mist, flowing over our hulls like an ocean devouring a drowning man. We watched in horror as their limbs latched onto our ships, their grasp tightening with unearthly strength. From their mouths, their limbs, their very pores, they secreted a liquid more potent than the deadliest acid, corroding our hulls with sickening ease. The strongest metals of our Empire's war machines turned to putrid sludge beneath their touch, and the moment they had feasted enough, they began to split. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. We had no hope. Panic consumed the fleet. Orders to retreat were given, but it was already too late. The Titans, our mightiest warships, were immobilized, their structures crumbling into the insatiable maw of the enemy. Only 9 ships escaped, my own among them. We fled through the void, thinking ourselves free, but even then, the horror pursued us. Some of the creatures had followed, warping through the fabric of space with nothing but their own nightmarish biology. They hunted us beyond the battlefield, beyond the reach of reason, driven only by that which they could never sate: hunger. We survived, barely, but what we witnessed cannot be forgotten. These creatures are not of this universe, not of any order that mortal minds can comprehend. They are a force beyond reckoning, a nightmare given flesh, and they will not stop. Not until there is nothing left to consume. And what, then, were they? From whence did they come? What cosmic hunger had birthed them from the cold abyss? No message came from them, no reason, no purpose beyond the unyielding impulse to devour and propagate. The minds of the Empire's scholars shattered upon the impossibility of their existence, their sanity consumed as readily as the great warships that once ruled the heavens. The question was no longer whether they could be stopped, but whether anything could endure in their wake. For what hope could there be against a hunger without end, an existence without reason, a force that neither fears nor relents? The amoeba did not seek dominion, they sought only to feed. And in their endless, writhing masses, in the madness of their ceaseless swarming, the Empire glimpsed a horror beyond reckoning. Not conquest, not war, but the end of all things. Mobilization of the Empire. A year passed since the first of these abominations slithered into our reality, and with that time came the grim realization: this was not a mere infestation, not an anomaly to be studied, but a harbinger of annihilation. The Empire, vast and proud, was forced to confront a simple truth: we were no longer rulers of the stars. We were prey. Calculations from the Empire's finest minds foretold a terrible future. Left unchecked, the amoeba would reach critical mass within a decade, a point beyond which no force, no strategy, no desperate measure could ever hope to stem the tide. If they were not halted before then, they never would be. The hunger of the void would claim all. Thus, the declaration was made. A state of calamity echoed across every world under the Empire's dominion. A call to arms, not for glory or conquest, but for survival. Every able-bodied citizen was summoned to the cause. In the face of oblivion, there was no choice but to fight. And the people rose. As one, they rallied. From the farthest colonies to the imperial heartworlds, billions swore themselves to the war effort, their resolve tempered in the crucible of desperation. Science turned its unblinking eye to the abyss, seeking weaknesses in the unknowable. Laboratories burned with sleepless minds, ceaselessly engineering new weapons, new stratagems, new hopes against the impossible. Among them, some, reckless, driven by madness or greed, sought the beasts themselves. These desperate adventurers plunged into the abyss and returned bearing horrors alive, sold to the Empire for a king's ransom. Specimens were dissected, analyzed, their grotesque structures studied with reverence and terror. From their flesh, secrets were torn, weaknesses glimpsed. Some speculated on their origin. Were they some ancient scourge, some remnant of a forgotten war fought in the deep past of the cosmos? Or were they harbingers, an inevitable tide of entropy sent to reclaim the stars from the arrogant hands of civilization? And so, the great mobilization had begun. The Empire would not go quietly. Against the hunger of the void, it would stand. It had to. For if it failed, there would be nothing left to remember it ever existed. Great fleets were built, weapons crafted with desperate ingenuity, projectiles laced with corrosive acids, radiation waves designed to disrupt their unnatural biology. Entire planets evacuated, and turned into trap-laden wastelands meant to serve as battlefields against the oncoming tide. The war would not be one of conquest but of endurance, a test of whether the Empire's will to survive could outlast the endless appetite of the void. But there were whispers of fleets vanishing without a trace, of colonies swallowed whole in a single night. Some feared that even as the Empire rallied, the amoeba were learning, adapting, becoming something far worse than they already were. And in the depths of space, beyond the reach of sensors or reason, something larger stirred, a horror beyond even the amoeba themselves, watching, waiting, preparing to unleash a darkness greater than anything the universe had ever known. Amoeba's biology. For the Empire's scientists, the opportunity to dissect and study the amoeba was a grim blessing, an unholy privilege to witness the violation of nature firsthand. Their anatomy defied every known principle, their very existence a contradiction to the fundamental laws of physics and biology. No blood, no true organs, only a writhing mass of semi-translucent flesh, a living nightmare of mutable form. How they warped through space remained a mystery, a horror beyond comprehension. Did they bend the fabric of reality through some instinctual force? Did they commune with the void itself? What sentience, if any, guided them? Despite the vast unknowns, the Empire's researchers uncovered weaknesses. While the amoeba proved impervious to energy-based weaponry, absorbing and repurposing it as sustenance, they were vulnerable to kinetic force. Railgun projectiles, high-yield explosives, and physical fragmentation munitions proved devastating, so long as they penetrated fully. If a bullet or shard became embedded within their writhing mass, it was simply devoured, assimilated into their grotesque biology. Their entire bodies served as a singular, all-consuming digestive system. Fluids coursed through them like liquid hunger, a corrosive slurry of enzymes capable of breaking down metal, rock, and flesh alike within seconds. The discovery of these enzymes spurred new experimental weapons, acidic counteragents, molecular disruptors designed to unravel their digestive processes. And yet, the greatest mystery remained: their ability to warp through the abyss. Even in death, their secrets remained locked away, whispering of horrors yet to be understood. But for the Empire, knowledge of their weaknesses was enough. Strategy was devised. Weapons were forged. The war was set to begin in earnest. Yet as preparations reached their peak, a dreadful realization loomed. Against a hunger as endless as the void, would even the might of the Empire be enough? The Great Battle of 7134. In the year 7134, beneath the cold, unblinking gaze of 1,000 distant stars, the Galactic Empire mobilized its might for a campaign of annihilation unlike any other. 20 million ships, a vast armada of steel and fire, gathered at the edge of the void, their hulls gleaming with the promise of righteous destruction. This was no mere skirmish, no fleeting clash of arms. This was an all-in gambit, a final, desperate bid to purge the galaxy of the abominable scourge that had plagued it for generations. The enemy, a writhing, amorphous swarm of space-borne amoebas, was a blight upon the cosmos, a living testament to the horrors that lurked in the darkest corners of existence. And now, the Empire would meet them in open battle, a clash of titans that would echo through the annals of history. The plan was simple, yet brutal in its efficiency. The larger ships, titans and medium-class vessels, would hold their distance, raining down a relentless barrage of high-explosive shrapnel upon the swarm. The smaller, faster corvettes, nimble and deadly, would engage in a deadly dance of distraction and dogfighting, drawing the enemy into the killing fields prepared by their larger brethren. The Empire had arrayed its forces on the flank of the enemy, a single, unified front with one purpose: complete and utter extermination. As the fleet moved into position, the sight was one of unparalleled grandeur. 20 million ships, their engines glowing like a constellation of dying stars, formed a vast, shimmering wall of metal and fire. It was a sight that transcended the individual, a testament to the unity and resolve of the Empire. For a moment, the vastness of the cosmos seemed to shrink, the infinite void rendered insignificant by the sheer scale of the Imperial Armada. And then, the battle began. The first swarm, a seething mass of 10 million amoebas, surged forward, their grotesque forms pulsating with a malevolent life. The Titans and medium-class ships opened fire, their cannons unleashing a storm of high-explosive shrapnel that tore through the void. Bright explosions of red light erupted amidst the swarm, each one followed by the sickening splatter of violet blood. The smaller corvettes darted in and out of the chaos, their guns blazing, their pilots executing the enemy with surgical precision. For a time, it seemed as though the battle would be a swift and decisive victory. But the void is a place of infinite cruelty, and the enemy was not so easily vanquished. As the first waves of the swarm were obliterated, a new threat emerged. The amoebas, driven by some unfathomable intelligence, called for reinforcements. Millions more of the vile creatures began to warp into the system, their arrival heralded by the sickening distortion of space-time. The commanders, seasoned veterans of countless battles, recognized the danger immediately. If the fleet were surrounded, the battle would be lost. And so, with a speed born of desperation, they issued the order to form a spherical formation. The transformation was swift and precise. The larger ships moved to the center, their hulls forming an impenetrable core of firepower. The smaller corvettes took up positions on the outer layer, their guns trained outward, ready to repel any attack. The result was a perfect sphere, a fortress of steel and fire that bristled with defiance. It was a formation born of necessity, a last-ditch effort to stave off annihilation, and not a moment too soon. The reinforcements arrived in waves, their numbers beyond counting. They came from all directions, their grotesque forms emerging from the warp with a sickening inevitability. The outer layer of corvettes opened fire, their guns blazing as they fought to hold the line. The larger ships, safe within the heart of the sphere, continued their relentless bombardment, their cannons unleashing a storm of destruction that lit up the void. The battle raged for days, a ceaseless symphony of carnage and death. The void was filled with the detritus of war, shrapnel, flesh, and blood. a macabre tapestry that stretched across the battlefield. The Empire's forces held firm, their discipline and resolve unshaken. The amoebas, for all their numbers, could not break through the defenses. And when the dust finally settled, the Empire emerged victorious. The cost had been high, but not unbearable. A few hundred lightships had been lost, their crews sacrificed to the greater good. But the enemy had been dealt a crushing blow. Billions of the vile creatures had been obliterated, their remains littering the void. It was a victory, but not a final one. The Battle of 7134 was but the first chapter in a long and bloody campaign, a campaign that would test the resolve of the Empire like never before. As the fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the campaign, the commanders took stock of their forces. The battle had been a success, but the war was far from over. The amoebas, though diminished, were not yet defeated. And the void, that infinite abyss, still held countless horrors waiting to be unleashed. But for now, the Empire could take solace in their victory. They had faced the darkness and emerged triumphant. And as they looked out upon the battlefield, upon the shattered remains of their enemy, they knew that they would do so again. For the Empire was eternal, its resolve unbreakable, its light a beacon in the darkness. And no matter what horrors the void might unleash, they would endure, they would fight, and they would prevail. A year of extermination. In the cold, unfeeling expanse of the void, where stars burn like distant funeral pyres and the silence of eternity reigns supreme, the Empire's Grand Armada carved a path of cleansing fire through the galaxy. System by system, the relentless campaign unfolded, a symphony of destruction orchestrated with military precision and an unyielding resolve. The enemy, a pestilential swarm of space-borne amoebas, had infested the cosmos like a cancer, their grotesque forms a blight upon the sanctity of existence. But the Empire, with its indomitable will and boundless resources, would not rest until every last vestige of the abomination was purged from the stars. The newly devised sphere formation, a masterpiece of tactical ingenuity, had proven itself an impenetrable fortress against the mindless hordes. 20 million battle-hardened ships, their hulls scarred by countless engagements, moved as one, a perfect sphere of steel and fire that bristled with defiance. Within its core, the Titans and medium-class vessels unleashed a ceaseless barrage of high-explosive shrapnel, their cannons roaring like the wrath of gods. On the outer layer, the nimble corvettes danced through the chaos, their guns blazing, their pilots executing the enemy with cold, mechanical precision. It was a formation born of necessity, a bulwark against the infinite darkness, and it had become the Empire's most potent weapon in the war of extermination. Yet, even the mightiest armada cannot endure without sustenance. The logistical demands of the campaign were staggering, a testament to the scale of the Empire's ambition. 100 million logistical vessels, a swarm of support ships that dwarfed the battle fleet itself, trailed in the wake of the Grand Armada. These unsung heroes of the campaign, their hulls laden with munitions, fuel, and repair materials, descended upon the battle-hardened ships after every engagement. Like worker ants tending to their queen, they swarmed over the damaged vessels, their crews laboring tirelessly to patch hulls, replace spent ammunition, and replenish depleted supplies. It was a logistical ballet of unparalleled complexity, a dance of survival that ensured the Empire's forces remained at peak readiness. But the campaign was not waged by the Empire alone. As word of the extermination spread across the galaxy, a tide of volunteers surged forth to join the cause. Recruits, fresh-faced and eager to prove their worth, flocked to the banners of the Empire. Private entities, their ships bristling with weaponry, offered their services in exchange for glory and profit. Even pirates, those outcasts of the void, cast aside their lawless ways to fight alongside the Empire. Their motives as varied as the stars themselves. It was a coalition born of necessity, a gathering of disparate forces united by a common purpose, the complete and utter annihilation of the amoebic scourge. The battles were relentless, a ceaseless grind of violence and death. System by system, the Empire advanced, their sphere formation an unbreakable shield against the enemy's mindless fury. The amoebas, for all their numbers, could not withstand the Empire's onslaught. They were crushed, burned, and obliterated, their remains scattered across the void like so much cosmic detritus. And yet, the campaign was far from over. The enemy was vast, their numbers seemingly infinite, and the Empire's forces, though mighty, were not invincible. But the Empire did not falter. They could not falter, for this was not merely a war of survival. It was a crusade, a holy mission to cleanse the galaxy of an abomination that defied the natural order. The soldiers of the Empire, from the lowliest recruit to the most seasoned veteran, fought with a fervor born of righteous fury. They knew that every system cleansed, every swarm destroyed, brought them one step closer to victory. And they knew that the cost of failure was unthinkable. As the year of extermination wore on, the Empire's resolve only grew stronger. The sphere formation, perfected through countless engagements, became a symbol of their unyielding determination. The logistical fleet, a testament to their boundless resources, ensured that the Grand Armada remained a force to be reckoned with. And the coalition of volunteers, a gathering of souls from every corner of the galaxy, stood as a testament to the unity of purpose that drove the Empire forward. The war was far from over, but the Empire would not rest until the last of the amoebas was eradicated. For they were not merely fighting for their survival, they were fighting for the very soul of the galaxy. And in the end, they would prevail. For the Empire was eternal, its light a beacon in the darkness, and its resolve unbreakable. The year of extermination was but the beginning, a prelude to the final, glorious victory that awaited them in the stars. The Last Stand. In the cold, unfeeling void of the LKZ-77 system, where the dim, pallid glow of a Class A star cast its feeble light upon a desolate expanse of cosmic dust and jagged asteroid belts, the final act of a year-long campaign of annihilation unfolded. The enemy, a grotesque swarm of space-borne amoebas, had coalesced into a singular, writhing mass of flesh and malice. These void-spawned abominations, driven by some primal, alien intelligence, had chosen this barren wasteland as their last redoubt. A place where the swirling mists of interstellar dust and the labyrinthine asteroid fields would shield them from the wrath of the Galactic Empire. But the citizens of the Empire, hardened by a year of relentless warfare and driven by a desperate need to rid the galaxy of this ever-consuming terror, cared little for the tactical advantages of the void. They came not as conquerors, but as avengers, poised to deliver the final, crushing blow. As the Imperial Armada emerged from the warp, their ships formed into a vast, unyielding sphere, a fortress of steel and fire that began to rain destruction upon any life signals detected within the murky depths of the system. The visibility was near zero, the space dust thick and choking, but the Imperials did not need to see their foe to destroy them. The bombardment was relentless, a symphony of annihilation that echoed through the void. And then, as if summoned by the fury of the Empire, the swarm emerged. They came in numbers beyond comprehension, a wall of flesh and teeth and writhing tentacles that stretched across the horizon of battle. Billions of them, a living tide of horror, surged forward with a mindless, relentless fury. The Imperial fleet held firm, their spherical formation a bastion of order against the chaos of the swarm. Losses were heavy, but not unexpected. The Empire had faced worse, or so they thought. Then, the unthinkable. From the depths of the cosmic cloud, a beam of light, pure and blinding, erupted. It was not the light of hope, but of annihilation. A supernova-like laser, a weapon of unimaginable power, tore through the heart of the Imperial fleet. In an instant, 1,000,000 ships were vaporized, their crews reduced to atoms, their existence erased from the fabric of reality. The shockwave of destruction rippled through the remaining forces, and for a moment, the disciplined ranks of the Empire faltered. Through the thinning veil of dust, the source of the devastation was revealed. It was a creature, an entity of such grotesque enormity that it defied comprehension. It loomed beside the dim star, a planet-sized abomination that seemed to be a fusion of nightmare and reality. Its form was that of a colossal brain, pulsating with malevolent intelligence, surrounded by a forest of writhing tentacles. At its center gaped a maw, a void within a void, from which the deadly beam had been unleashed. This was no mere beast, it was a titan, a god of the void, a being that had no place in the sane universe. Panic spread like a virus through the Imperial ranks. Ships broke formation, their crews overcome by a primal fear that no amount of training could suppress. The swarm, emboldened by the presence of their titanic master, pressed their attack with renewed ferocity. The Empire, for the first time in living memory, teetered on the brink of collapse. But in this darkest hour, a voice rose above the cacophony of fear and despair. It was the voice of Saint Corporal Sinai, a warrior of the Empire, a man whose name would be etched into the annals of history. From the bridge of his Titan-class ship, he spoke, his words a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. His speech was not one of empty bravado, but of cold, unyielding resolve. He spoke of duty, of sacrifice, of the unbreakable will of the Empire. He spoke of the need to strike at the heart of the beast, to destroy the Titan before it could unleash another cataclysmic blast. And he spoke of martyrdom, of the glory that awaited those who would give their lives for the greater good. His words ignited a fire in the hearts of the Imperial soldiers. The panic subsided, replaced by a grim determination. The fleet reformed, their focus now singular, to clear a path for Saint Corporal Sinai and his volunteers, to give them a chance to reach the Titan and deliver the killing blow. The fire of the entire armada was concentrated into a single, devastating barrage, a corridor of destruction carved through the swarm. Sinai and his comrades, a mere 19 souls against the infinite darkness, surged forward at maximum speed. They knew they would not return. They knew their fate was sealed, but they also knew that their sacrifice would be the key to victory. The swarm closed in around them, a living wall of teeth and claws and writhing tentacles. The volunteers fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their ships a blur of motion and fire. One by one, they fell, their lives extinguished in the cold void. But Sinai pressed on, his Titan-class ship a blazing comet of defiance. And then, the explosion. A flash of light, brighter than the dim star of LKZ-77, erupted from the heart of the Titan. The creature, this god of the void, was no more. Its death throes sent shockwaves through the swarm. The once coordinated mass of flesh now a chaotic, disorganized rabble. The Empire, emboldened by the sacrifice of Sinai and his comrades, pressed their advantage. The swarm, now leaderless and directionless, was systematically eradicated. In a matter of days, the last of the void-spawned horrors were wiped out, their threat to the galaxy extinguished. But the cost had been high. The Empire had lost more than ships and soldiers. They had lost a part of their soul. The memory of the Titan, of the supernova-like beam that had annihilated 1,000,000 lives in an instant, would haunt them for generations. And yet, in the face of such unimaginable horror, they had prevailed. They had faced the abyss, and though it had stared back with eyes of pure malevolence, they had not blinked. Saint Corporal Sinai and his 18 comrades were remembered as heroes, their names enshrined in the halls of the Empire. But their sacrifice was more than a tale of heroism. It was a reminder of the fragility of existence, of the ever-present threat of the void, and of the unyielding resolve that defined the Empire. For in the end, it was not the strength of their ships or the power of their weapons that had saved them, but the indomitable will of those who refused to yield, even in the face of cosmic horror. And so, the Empire endured, their light a flickering candle in the infinite darkness, a testament to the resilience of life in a universe that seemed determined to extinguish it. But the shadows of the void were long, and the whispers of the abyss were never silent. The Empire had won the battle, but the war against the unknown was far from over. The Empire, safe once more. In the wake of the Great Extermination, the Galactic Empire stood victorious, its banners unfurled across 1,000 cleansed star systems. The year that followed was one of vigilance and quiet resolve, as smaller extermination squads, hardened by the fires of war, scoured the farthest reaches of the galaxy. These squads, though diminished in number, were no less formidable. They moved with the precision of hunters, their sensors scanning the void for any trace of the abominable scourge that had once threatened to consume all. Sector by sector, galaxy by galaxy, they swept through the darkness, leaving no stone unturned, no shadow unexamined. And in the end, it seemed as though the last of the vile creatures had been eradicated, their presence reduced to nothing more than a memory. Peace, that most elusive of treasures, once again reigned over the Empire. But this was not the fragile peace of old, born of complacency and ignorance. This was a peace forged in the crucible of war, tempered by sacrifice and unity. The Empire, once a collection of disparate worlds and factions, had been united by a single, unyielding purpose, the survival of all. And from this unity, heroes had emerged, their names etched into the annals of history like stars in the night sky. Saint Corporal Sinai, the martyr who had struck down the Titan, the countless pilots and soldiers who had given their lives in the sphere formation, the logistical crews who had kept the war machine running. These were the figures who would be remembered, their deeds immortalized in song and story. Yet, even in victory, questions lingered, shadows cast by the unknown. What were these creatures, these space-born amoebas that had threatened to engulf the galaxy? Where had they come from, and what dark purpose had driven them to such mindless destruction? The scholars of the Institute, those pale and sleepless custodians of knowledge, sifted through the remnants of the enemy, their minds teetering on the edge of revelation and madness. But the answers, if they existed at all, remained elusive, hidden in the depths of the void. And then there was the question that haunted the dreams of every citizen, from the lowliest worker to the highest commander. Would they return? The amoebas, for all their mindless fury, had been a force of nature, a plague that had swept across the galaxy like a storm. Could such a thing truly be eradicated, or did some remnant still linger, waiting in the darkness for the moment to strike again? The Empire, ever vigilant, did not dwell on these questions. They had faced the abyss and emerged victorious, their resolve unshaken. If the creatures returned, they would be met with the same unyielding force, the same unity of purpose that had driven the Empire to victory. The sphere formation, the logistical fleets, the coalition of volunteers, these were not merely tools of war, but symbols of the Empire's indomitable will. They would endure, as they always had, and they would prevail. And so, the Empire stood once more upon the precipice of a new era. The war had changed them, forged them into something greater than the sum of their parts. They were no longer merely a collection of worlds and factions. They were a single, unified force, a beacon of light in the darkness. The heroes of the era would be remembered, their deeds a testament to the strength and resilience of the Empire. And though the shadows of the unknown still loomed, the Empire would face them, as they always had, with courage and resolve. For the Empire was eternal, its light a beacon in the darkness, and its resolve unbreakable. The war was over, but the legacy of those who had fought and died would endure, a reminder of the price of peace and the strength of unity. And if the darkness should ever return, the Empire would be ready, for they had faced the abyss, and they had prevailed. And they would do so again, no matter what horrors the void might unleash. The Old Gods. Origins of the Old Gods. In the fathomless abyss of time, where empires rise like fleeting stars only to crumble into the dust of forgotten eons, there exists a grim and ceaseless cycle, a cycle born of desperation, hubris, and the unquenchable thirst for dominion. When the light of a civilization begins to wane, when the shadows of decline creep across its once glorious halls, the rulers of such realms turn their gaze inward, to the forbidden and the profane. It is in these moments of decay that the abyssal experiments begin, whispered in the dark corridors of power, where the desperate seek to reclaim their fading glory by defying the very laws of nature and the cosmos. These experiments, born of madness and ambition, are not mere acts of science but rituals of despair. Autarchs and tyrants, those who once held galaxies in their iron grasp, now clutch at the fraying threads of their immortality. They submit themselves to procedures unspeakable, to transformations that warp flesh and mind alike. They become things no longer recognizable as rulers or even as beings of mortal origin. Their forms twist into grotesque parodies of life, their minds unraveling into chaos as they teeter on the precipice of sanity. And yet, they persist, driven by the delusion that they can cheat death, that they can ascend beyond the limits of their fleeting existence. But the universe is not kind to those who seek to bend it to their will. These abominations, these once great rulers, are hunted down by their own creations, by their own people, who rise in rebellion against the horrors unleashed upon them. The cycle repeats, an endless spiral of ambition and ruin, as empires fall and new ones rise, only to succumb to the same temptations. The void is littered with the remnants of these failed experiments, with the husks of worlds and civilizations that dared to reach too far, too fast. Yet, not all such endeavors end in failure. There are rare instances, whispers carried on the cosmic winds, of those who succeed. These few, these cursed few, emerge from their trials not as maddened wrecks but as beings of immense power and longevity. They hold their sanity, if such a word can still apply, for millennia, their minds sharp and their wills unbroken. They become the architects of new orders, the unseen hands that guide the fate of galaxies. But even they are not immune to the corruption that comes with such power. Their rule, though enduring, is often marked by tyranny and cruelty, for the price of their ascension is the loss of their humanity, if they ever possessed such a thing to begin with. The creatures born of these experiments, whether failures or successes, are often referred to as the Old Gods. They are beings of myth and nightmare, their origins shrouded in the mists of time. Legends grow around them, tales of their power and their cruelty, of the cults that rise to worship them in the darkest corners of the universe. These cults, fueled by fear and desperation, spread like a plague, their followers willing to sacrifice everything for a glimpse of their god's favor. The Old Gods themselves are indifferent to such devotion, their minds occupied with schemes and machinations beyond the comprehension of mortal beings. The origins of the Old Gods are as varied as the stars themselves. Some are the result of biotechnological marvels, their bodies fused with machines and alien DNA, their minds augmented to the point of godhood. Others are the products of arcane sciences, their very essence rewritten by forces that should have remained untouched. And still others are the culmination of countless experiments, their forms a patchwork of flesh, metal, and energy, their existence a defiance of all natural laws. But what drives these civilizations, these rulers, to such extremes? It is the same force that has driven all beings since the dawn of time: greed. The greed for power, for knowledge, for immortality. It is a force that knows no bounds, that cares not for the consequences of its actions. It is the great motivator, the spark that ignites the fires of innovation and destruction alike. And yet, it is also the great destroyer, the force that brings empires to their knees and leaves nothing but ruin in its wake. The Old Gods are a testament to this greed, to the lengths beings will go to in their pursuit of power. They are the dark reflection of all that is great and terrible in the universe, a reminder that even the mightiest empires are but a fleeting moment in the grand tapestry of existence. And as long as there are those who seek to defy the natural order, who seek to grasp the stars in their hands and bend them to their will, the cycle will continue. The old gods will rise, and they will fall. And the void will bear witness to their endless dance of ambition and ruin. For in the end, the universe is indifferent. It does not care for the rise and fall of empires, for the birth and death of gods. It simply is, a vast and uncaring expanse that stretches on forever. And yet, within its depths, there is a strange beauty, a dark and terrible beauty that speaks to the heart of all who dare to look upon it. It is the beauty of chaos, of creation and destruction, of life and death. And it is this beauty that drives the cycle, that ensures the old gods will always rise, and that their legends will endure, whispered in the dark corners of the universe for all eternity. Accounts of Khazal the Conqueror. In the annals of the Radigan galaxy, amidst the swirling mists of time and the echoes of forgotten empires, there lies the tale of Khazal the Conqueror, a name whispered in dread and awe, a name that heralds both the zenith of ambition and the nadir of hubris. 32 millennia ago, in an age when the stars burned brighter and the void was yet unclaimed by any single hand, Khazal emerged as the heir to a small but proud empire. He was a figure of relentless drive, a young prince whose mind churned with visions of grandeur and whose hands itched to shape the cosmos to his will. Khazal's rise to power was swift and unyielding. Upon the death of his father, he ascended the throne with a fire in his heart and a hunger in his soul. The galaxy, fractured and war-torn, became his canvas, and with brutal efficiency, he waged a campaign of conquest that carved vast swathes of territory into his burgeoning dominion. Yet, victory came at a cost. The resources of his empire were stretched thin, the people burdened by the weight of endless war. Hunger gnawed at the edges of his realm, and riots erupted like wildfires, threatening to consume all that he had built. It was in this crucible of desperation that Khazal made his fateful decision, a decision that would forever alter the course of his empire and the very fabric of life itself. Turning to the forbidden arts of bioengineering, he commanded his scientists to create creatures and plants of unparalleled growth, organisms that could sustain his people and stabilize his realm. These experiments, though not unprecedented, were conducted with a reckless abandon that defied all ethical and natural boundaries. The results were as miraculous as they were horrifying. The new flora and fauna grew at an astonishing rate, their forms grotesque and unnatural. They fed the empire, yes, but at a terrible price. Those who consumed them faced a 15% chance of mutation, their bodies twisting into abominations of flesh and bone. Some grew extra limbs, their skin stretching and warping into monstrous shapes. Others sprouted second heads, their minds fracturing under the weight of their new forms. And then there were the extreme cases, those rare, cursed few who became towering monstrosities, their minds consumed by madness, their bodies ever growing, ever hungry. Khazal, ever the pragmatist, saw not tragedy in these mutations but opportunity. He ordered his scientists to intensify their work, to refine the mutagens and push the boundaries of what was possible. Within a year, they succeeded, creating new strains of food that carried a 70% chance of mutation and a 10% chance of extreme transformation. The empire, already teetering on the edge of chaos, began to embrace its new reality, its people transforming into something other, something alien. But Khazal's ambitions did not end there. He dreamed of a new species, one that would surpass all others in strength, intelligence, and resilience. After 2 years of grueling experimentation, his scientists unveiled Khazal 115, a mutagen of unparalleled potency. Those injected with this vile concoction underwent a metamorphosis so profound, so grotesque, that it defied all description. Their bodies expanded exponentially, their bones and tissues growing in a hyperdrive of evolution. Their minds, swollen with newfound intelligence, became vast and labyrinthine, capable of feats of thought and calculation that bordered on the divine. Some even developed the ability to survive in the vacuum of space, their lungs holding oxygen for days, their bodies enduring the cold embrace of the void. From these mutants, Khazal forged a new military unit, a cadre of living weapons designed to breach enemy ships and sow chaos from within. Their success in battle was undeniable, and Khazal, intoxicated by his own power, yearned to join their ranks. A decade later, after a decisive victory in yet another war, he finally took the plunge. His scientists prepared a special, potent strain of the mutagen, and Khazal submitted himself to its transformative embrace. For a month, he lay in an incubation chamber, his body fed a constant stream of biomass, his form swelling and twisting with each passing moment. When he emerged, he was no longer a man but a monstrosity, a towering cube of flesh, 12 meters in height and width. His limbs atrophied and discarded, his mind expanded to godlike proportions. He wielded psychic powers that defied comprehension, reading minds and manipulating matter with but a thought. He was, in every sense, a god among men. Khazal proclaimed himself divine, and his empire, already steeped in mutation and madness, embraced his cult of personality. For centuries, he ruled with an iron will, his empire a grotesque tapestry of flesh and ambition. But his reign was not to last. A refugee empire, fleeing the cataclysmic collapse of their home system into a black hole, stumbled upon the Radisian galaxy. What they found there horrified them. A realm of twisted flesh and maddened minds, a civilization that had embraced its own corruption. With religious zeal, they vowed to cleanse the galaxy of its plague, to build a new empire upon the ashes of the old. The war that followed was long and brutal, but the refugees, armed with superior technology and numbers, prevailed. Kazal, now a 100-meter cube of pulsating flesh, was captured and put on display as a testament to the horrors he had unleashed. For 50 years, he languished in captivity, his psychic powers growing ever stronger, his mind reaching across thousands of kilometers, breaching barriers and bending wills. In the end, the new empire could not risk his continued evolution. Kazal, the once great conqueror, was executed, his monstrous form reduced to ash. His legacy, however, endures, a cautionary tale of ambition unchecked, of the price paid for defying the natural order. And so, across countless galaxies, the experiments of genetic manipulation were banned, their horrors too great to risk again. Yet, in the dark corners of the universe, whispers persist. Whispers of those who would follow in Kazal's footsteps, who would dare to reach beyond the stars and claim the power of gods. For the cycle of ambition and ruin is eternal, and the void is ever watchful, waiting for the next Kazal to rise. Ra'ur the Endless. In the Felini galaxy, on the quiet, unassuming planet of Ryak, there once lived a scientist named Ra'ur, a man of brilliant mind and boundless curiosity, yet cursed with an ambition that would unravel the very fabric of life itself. Ra'ur was a bioengineer, a master of the microscopic, a weaver of flesh and cell. His experiments delved into the mysteries of cellular division and expansion, seeking to unlock the secrets of growth and regeneration. But in his relentless pursuit of knowledge, he stumbled upon a formula so potent, so abhorrent, that it would forever alter the course of his existence and cast a shadow of dread across the cosmos. 8,000 years ago, in a moment of tragic folly or perhaps a stroke of cosmic malice, Ra'ur's creation, a formula designed to induce infinite cellular growth, found its way into his own system. The results were immediate and catastrophic. His cells, driven into an uncontrollable overdrive, began to multiply without end, his flesh expanding in a grotesque parody of life. What began as a man soon became a nightmare, a living tide of biomass that consumed all in its path. Ryak, though sparsely populated, was a planet rich in flora and fauna, its verdant landscapes a paradise for the colonists who called it home. But Ra'ur's transformation turned this Eden into a hellscape. His ever-expanding flesh spread across the planet like a plague, consuming forests, mountains, and oceans alike. The colonists, those who did not flee in time, were absorbed into the growing mass, their screams silenced as they became one with the abomination. For years, Ra'ur, or what remained of him, grew unchecked, his consciousness fragmented, his identity lost in the sea of flesh that now covered the planet. But even in his monstrous state, a semblance of purpose remained. The biomass, driven by some primal instinct, began to construct crude vessels from the wreckage of ships and the detritus of civilization. These vessels, grotesque amalgamations of metal and flesh, carried fragments of Ra'ur's ever-growing form to other worlds, seeding them with the same horror that had consumed Ryak. It was one of these vessels that first brought Ra'ur to the attention of the wider galaxy. The ship, a twisted mockery of engineering, crash-landed on a densely populated world in a highly habitable zone. The colonists who discovered it were horrified by the pulsating mass of flesh that spilled from its ruptured hull. Authorities were alerted, and scientists quickly devised a formula to neutralize the biomass, eradicating the infestation with relative ease. But the discovery of the vessel raised alarming questions. Where had it come from? And what manner of being could create such a thing? The answers lay in the Felini galaxy, on the planet Ryak. A military armada, dispatched to investigate, arrived to find a sight that defied comprehension. Ryak was no longer a planet but a living, breathing entity. A vast, undulating mass of crimson flesh that stretched across its surface and beyond. The biomass pulsed and convulsed, spewing tendrils of flesh into the void, where they drifted aimlessly, feeding on the radiation of nearby stars. The other planets in the system had not been spared. They too were consumed, their surfaces transformed into shifting landscapes of living tissue. The Armada, unprepared for the scale of the horror before them, called for reinforcements. Even with additional ships, the task of eradicating Ra'ur's biomass took a full year of relentless bombardment. Chemical agents, designed to dissolve the flesh, were deployed in vast quantities, their corrosive effects slowly breaking down the abomination. When the last of the biomass was finally destroyed, The system was left barren, its planets scarred by the ordeal. But Ra-Ur's story did not end there. The flesh that had been ejected into the void, carried by his crude vessels, had found new worlds to infest. Every few decades, reports emerged of new outbreaks, each one more evolved, more resilient than the last. Ra-Ur, or whatever remained of him, had become a cosmic plague, a living embodiment of endless growth and consumption. To this day, the galaxy lives in fear of Ra-Ur the Endless. His name is spoken in hushed tones, a warning to those who would tamper with the natural order. For Ra-Ur is not merely a man or a monster, he is a force, a reminder of the fragility of life and the dangers of unchecked ambition. And somewhere, in the quiet depths of space, his flesh continues to grow, to evolve, to consume. The galaxy may have rid itself of Ryak's horror, but Ra-Ur's legacy endures. He is out there, waiting, expanding, an eternal testament to the folly of those who seek to play God. And the stars, cold and indifferent, bear silent witness to his endless hunger. The machine. In the vast, unyielding expanse of the cosmos, where stars are born and die in the blink of eternity's eye, there exists an entity that defies comprehension, a relic of a time so ancient that its origins are lost to the abyss of forgotten ages. It is known simply as the machine, a planet-sized construct of metal and mystery, a silent sentinel that drifts through the void, its purpose as inscrutable as its existence. The machine is a marvel of engineering, a labyrinthine amalgamation of gears, pistons, and spinning contraptions that hum with an otherworldly rhythm. Its surface is a shifting mosaic of metallic plates, each one etched with patterns that seem to writhe and twist when gazed upon for too long. At the heart of its form, 6 colossal eyes, each a glowing orb of cold, unblinking light, survey the cosmos with an omniscient gaze. These eyes, positioned symmetrically around its spherical body, grant the machine a full, unbroken view of its surroundings, as though it is forever watching, forever waiting. Legends of the machine stretch back to the earliest records of sentient life. It appears in the myths of 1,000 civilizations, its presence a constant in the ever-shifting tapestry of galactic history. Some revere it as a god, a harbinger of fate, while others fear it as a harbinger of doom. Yet, despite its ubiquity in the collective consciousness of the galaxy, its origins remain a mystery. Who built it? For what purpose? These questions haunt the minds of scholars and scientists, their theories as numerous as the stars themselves. The machine is rarely hostile, content to drift silently through the void, observing the ebb and flow of civilizations with an almost indifferent detachment. But when threatened, it becomes a force of unimaginable destruction. Armadas, both royal and rogue, have dared to challenge it, their weapons of war unleashed in a futile attempt to pierce its impenetrable hull. None have succeeded. The machine's defenses are absolute, its retaliatory strikes swift and merciless. Entire fleets have been reduced to ash, their remains scattered across the void like dust in the solar wind. Yet, for all its power, the machine is not a conqueror. It does not seek dominion, nor does it impose its will upon the galaxy. It simply exists, a silent observer of the cosmos, its presence often preceding or following events of great significance. Wars, cataclysms, the rise and fall of empires. The machine is there, watching, recording, analyzing. Some believe it to be a custodian of knowledge, a living archive of the galaxy's history. Others speculate that it is a scout, a vanguard for a civilization long extinct or yet to come. Attempts to communicate with the machine have been made, each one ending in frustration and failure. The entity emits a constant stream of audio, a cacophony of static, electronic screeches, and faint, indecipherable whispers. Linguists, cryptographers, and AI systems have spent millennia attempting to decode its language, but to no avail. The machine's speech, if it can be called that, remains an enigma, a puzzle that defies all attempts at solution. Debate rages among the galaxy's powers about how to deal with the machine. Some argue for the assembly of a grand armada, a united front to destroy the entity before it can unleash some unknown catastrophe. They see it as a threat, a ticking time bomb that could one day turn its gaze upon the civilizations of the galaxy. Others advocate for caution, believing that the machine should be left to its wanderings, its purpose and intentions respected, if not understood. The truth, as always, lies shrouded in mystery. The machine is a relic of a bygone age, a testament to the ingenuity and ambition of a civilization that may have long since vanished into the annals of time. It is a reminder of the impermanence of all things, even the greatest of empires. For if a civilization capable of creating such a marvel could fall, what hope is there for those who come after? And yet, the machine endures, a silent witness to the passage of eons. It is a question without an answer, a riddle without a solution. It is a monument to the unknown, a beacon of wonder and dread in the infinite void. What is the machine? A guardian? A harbinger? A relic? Or something else entirely? We do not know. And perhaps, we never will.